Chapter 43, in which houses are sold. Chapter text. Everyone took a few days after returning from Diagon Alley to enjoy their new acquisitions. Mrs. Weasley tried to tell Sirius they could pay him for everything, but Sirius waved her off, telling her the purchases had been thanks for being told he was a good boy even when he wasn't. "It's good for the self-esteem, you know," Sirius said. Hedwig took Neville's present after Harry wrapped it, giving a very pointed look at Pigwidgeon. The name had stuck, to Ron's chagrin, before flying off with all the dignity she could muster. They did top up on potions ingredients on a later trip, Remus supervising when Harry was brewing. "Sirius near a cauldron is just asking for trouble," he had said, which Sirius couldn't exactly argue with. Other than that, the only trips worth of note were when Sirius had to go for his follow-ups at St. Mungo's at Remus's insistence, and when both Sirius and Remus went off to undisclosed locations during the full moon. At least until Sirius got an official-looking letter from a handsome sooty that told him that Gringotts, curse breakers, had finished with his house. Sirius was happy to send a letter to Dumbledore before writing back and saying that he'd be in to sell it as soon as he could get a date nailed down. "Pity I can't sell the house elf that comes with it," Sirius muttered. "Creature was left to his own devices for too long, I'm afraid, skulking about the house while my mother's batty portrait screeched at him." "Told you rich old families have house elves," Ron told Harry. "What does happen to him?" Harry asked Sirius. "He stays with the family. Me, unfortunately," Sirius said, grimacing. "I'm not too thrilled about this. He's hated me since I took off, and he has a habit of parroting some of the family's worst prejudices. Can't you ask him not to?" "I've told him that it reflects poorly on the family, which got him to cool down somewhat, and then I had to send him to Hogwarts for a while because he kept trying to stop the curse breakers from working the house over." "How dare this filth touch my mistress's things," he said, affecting a shrill tone. "I swear he loves the family junk more than I do." "Why not give him all that then, since you don't want it?" Harry asked. "I mean, as far as I know, all you can't give him is clothes, right?" "Bribery, then," Sirius said, when Harry nodded. "Well, I suppose it can't hurt." Harry and Ron followed him outside, curious, nodded politely when he said that he didn't think summoning Creature in the house was a good idea, and then called the house elf. Harry could see why right away. While Darby and Mipsy were both fairly tidy, Mipsy much more than Darby, Creature was a mess. Harry had honestly thought Sirius had summoned a pile of dirty rags at first, and its language wasn't much better. "Blood traitor?" Harry asked Ron. "Present," Ron said, raising a hand. "All Weasleys are, it's a thing." "All right, knock it off," Sirius said irritably. "Creature, we've talked about you talking like that." "Mistress would approve," Creature muttered treasonously. "I'm sure. Now, Creature, the filthy half-blood godson of mine whom you so insulted actually brought up a good proposition. I told you I was selling the house. I forbid you to interrupt with a tantrum. Wait until I'm done, and since I'm not taking any of the family heirlooms, I'm letting you take them." Creature froze. "What?" "Every last stick, down to the last least fork. You can even take Mom if you can get her unstuck from the wall. I'm selling the house completely furnished. I'll let Dumbledore know what's going on, and when I get the new house bought or built or whatever, I'll make sure you have a nice shed or something to keep it all in. Sound good? Creature, please stop crying." Creature wasn't. Creature was blubbering about how good and wonderful Master Sirius was for trusting poor Creature with his mistress's most beloved heirlooms. Harry danced back when he moved on to sobbing at his feet for making such a kind-hearted suggestion. Master's godson is so kind and good. Eventually did stop crying long enough for Sirius to tell him to go take stock, which Creature did at once. "So that was unexpected," Sirius said. "I think I've been lucky so far to have avoided the other house elf encounters," Ron said, still staring at the place Creature had been. "Darby was about the same," Harry told him. "I'm wondering if it's a house elf thing." "Perhaps. Well then," Sirius said, "I guess the only thing left to do is sell the house and find a new one. I can't keep sleeping on your mother's hearth forever, Ron. Dad and Percy are starting to complain about having to step over you to go to work," Ron agreed. "A mark of a good dog, then." Sirius left the next day for Gringotts with the intent to sell his house, said he didn't anticipate this taking too long. Harry and Ron decided to pass this time with walking to the Lovegoods and checking in on how Luna was handling her gnome following. "Very well. If the little houses, everywhere were any indication. Gnomes are frightful good luck, Mr. Lovegood told them, gesturing a little with the small house he was holding. The Muggles obviously know this as well. Arthur told me about these little gnome houses that they put out to attract gnomes. Harry wasn't really sure how to explain to Mr. Lovegood that Muggle concepts of gnomes were entirely different from the wizarding reality. It hadn't gotten any easier since he had the same question about Luna. Decided to ask instead if they would be able to go to the Quidditch World Cup final or if they'd be listening in from home. "We're undecided," Luna said. "The Quibbler has been doing well enough we could afford tickets, and there's certainly a chance of humdingers showing up. But there's also a chance of rowdy Quidditch fans," Mr. Lovegood sighed. "Although considering it's in the general neighborhood for once, we'll see." They turned down the offering of turnip tea and headed back for the burrow, Ron assuring them that he'd send any gnomes he saw their way. "We've got a surplus," he assured them, once they were out of earshot. "So that was mental," Ron said. "You don't have as many gnomes to deal with," Harry pointed out. "True, and I hate to say it, but what if they're on to something? What if Muggles really do put out those houses to attract gnomes? I'm pretty sure like 90% of our neighbors in Privet Drive had those houses because they thought they were cute, not because they were hoping to attract gnomes. Muggles think gnomes look like little bearded men, not potatoes with legs. That's not really a better image. I mean, I don't want some hairy little guy living in my yard. I don't think anyone does, Ron." By then they were back at the burrow, Mrs. Weasley putting out tea and finding that Sirius wasn't back yet. "They probably wanted to go over the house with him," Mrs. Weasley told them. "He'll be back by dinner." Sirius was not. Dinner came and went, and Remus and Mr. Weasley and Percy came back well before Sirius finally stumbled through the fireplace, looking dazed. "Sirius," Harry barked, hopping up and running over. "What happened?" Sirius waved them off, Ron and Remus asking the same questions, the Weasleys asking if he was all right. "I'm fine. Ish," he said finally. "I need a drink first, though." "Why? What happened?" Remus asked as Mr. Weasley got a measure from the bottle he kept in a high cupboard. "You were supposed to be selling a house. What took you so long?" "So the goblins wanted to go over everything before the house officially changed hands," Sirius said, knocking back the glass before handing it back to Mr. Weasley. "Thanks. Need another one. Might want to pour yourself one too. Actually, everybody of drinking age. Not sure if you kids should be hearing this." "What happened?" Harry said, irked at that. Sirius seemed to sense it, although his next question made Harry wish he had taken him up on that offer. "Have any of you lot ever heard of a Horcrux?" Harry, unfortunately, had indeed heard of a Horcrux, as had the Weasleys, and explaining this to Sirius robbed him of whatever color he had regained from Mr. Weasley's bottle of fire whiskey. "So I was wondering why Dumbledore got that house elf to bring that ratty old diary," Sirius said. "He met me at Gringotts. I told him I didn't want to spend any longer on that house than I needed to, and I told Griffook, that's the goblin that was handling the sale, that it was fine." "Oh, I know Griffook," Harry said. "He's the one who handles my vault. Well, it's good to know he's got good taste." But anyway, he and pretty much every goblin in Gringotts was not happy with this, because apparently the locket that they found that had this Horcrux was Slytherin's old locket, and they have opinions about old goblin-made stuff being tainted like that. So do I, come to think of it. I had a bit of someone's soul stuck in my house, and not just any someone's. Voldemort. How'd you guess? "The diary," Harry said. "Dumbledore said it was a piece of Voldemort, and if he wanted to compare the two. And you know who had to be the heir of Slytherin to be able to open the Chamber of Secrets," Ron agreed. "I don't know. All Harry had to do was speak a little Parseltongue, and that worked," Fred pointed out. "Yes, well, wait, what?" Sirius asked, looking at Harry. "It's a long story," Harry said. "Harry can talk to snakes. It doesn't take that long," George said. "Besides, you saw him have a little hissy conversation with Mauve last year," Fred added. "But then again, a lot was happening then, so we can forgive him for that slipping his mind." "True, George. We were revisiting this later," Percy said. "Back to there being a second Horcrux." "Yes, well, Dumbledore and the goblins did a bit of magic to see if the pieces of soul actually came from Valdi. The unfortunate answer is yes." Which then led to the question of how the piece of gross got into Grimmauld Place to begin with. "Maybe you-know-who was actually giving bits of soul to really dark families," Ron mused. I mean, he gave the diary to Malfoy, which is what Dumbledore said, which reminded me that my brother Regulus was a Death Eater. And well, Creature liked him, and he liked Creature, so that led to me calling Creature and asking him about it. Creature threw a whole fit and a half at the sight of that locket, said that Reggie had gotten sick of what Valdi was doing and found out about it, got Creature to help him go get it. By the way, there's auras heading to where that thing was because apparently Valdi left some nasty stuff there. And Reggie told Creature that if he failed then Creature needed to get rid of it, and Reggie was a good guy, Sirius said, looking at Remus in consternation. I mean, yes, he followed the family business and worked for the biggest jerk since Grindelwald, but he ended up trying to do the right thing in the end. Some people change, Remus said, Snips bowing his head in what Harry thought was respect for the dead. Sirius nodded, coughed, continued. So anyway, the bit of gross in the locket is gone, finito, no more, Sirius announced. Terminated with extreme prejudice by the goblins, and now Dumbledore has the house, which means I need to go back to house hunting after a long shower to scrub that whole thing out of my thoughts. We tried, Ginny said. It doesn't help, Ron said sourly. And also I have concerns about what you kids get up to at school, because from the sounds of it, you put us to shame. And that's with us sneaking out late every month. Harry just has that special talent that every troublemaker needs, Fred said. Now if only he used it, George sighed, earning the twins slaps upside the head from Mrs. Weasley. Sirius looked at Harry for a long time, like he was deeply considering this. I mean, on the one hand, I agree, but on the other, I'm not sure I'm ready for grey hairs. I'd like a much calmer time of it, to be fair, Harry said, Snips nodding fervently. We all do, Mrs. Weasley said. Now bed, the lot of you. It still took a long time for them to exhaust talking through the horror of someone making 2 Horcruxes, and by the time Harry fell asleep, it was the late hours of the night. Falling into a disturbing dream that he didn't quite remember the next morning wasn't appreciated, nor was his scar prickling when he did wake up. He decided to just chalk it up to talk of Horcruxes and move on with his life, such as it was. Chapter 44, in which abodes are hunted for. Chapter text Harry's birthday was easily the best he ever had, and after that was an excited combination of prepping for the Quidditch World Cup final. Mr. Weasley and Sirius had gotten enough tickets for the lot of them, and helping Sirius find a house. The latter was an endeavor that Sirius got Harry and Remus in on, as they'd also be living in said house, and it's not fair to not have your inputs. Harry was slowly getting used to side-along apparition, as little as he'd like to, and learning more about wizarding houses. Mostly, he was learning that he liked them better than Muggle housing, although there were many that apparently took after Hogwarts insofar as floor plans were concerned. There were houses with stairs that went up and only up, cupboards that would only show up on Wednesdays, and pantries that would constantly expand to accommodate what you purchased. In all, interesting. Sirius would also bound along with them in dog form when they went to visit the Lovegoods, and occasionally pause to run around a large empty field between their house and the burrow. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley said that the field had long been empty, had been owned by a farmer, and left to his son when he died. Some inquiring on Sirius part showed that the son wasn't allowed to sell to a developer. Harry had to explain what this was, so it had laid fallow while he tried to find a buyer who didn't mind building a single house out in the sticks. Sirius did a lot of looking into the feasibility of just building a house over buying an existing one, and after much discussion and figuring out how writing up a Muggle check worked and how that would pull from his Gringotts account, Sirius was the proud owner of a vacant lot. There we go, Sirius said, turning over a shovelful of dirt. Now we just have to build something. There goes the neighborhood, the twins chimed. That wasn't the only acquisition Sirius had made in the Muggle village, however, and when they weren't all prepping for the remaining Weasley brothers and Hermione's arrival, Sirius and Mr. Weasley tinkered with a television trying to get it to work. So on the front here, Mr. Weasley said, as Sirius tried to make sense of the instructions. There should be a moving picture. Maybe the people are out. It runs on electricity, Harry supplied. Does it? Oh, that's fascinating. Does it use a plug? Yes. Or batteries? Batteries. I have a whole collection. Do you mean those do things? Yes. How does the radio work then? Harry asked Ron when Mr. Weasley scurried off to get his battery collection. Magic, Ron said simply. I guess we could get this to work with magic too. Not sure how, though. Sirius considered this, pulled out his wand and tapped the TV. Work, you. Everyone waited a few charged moments before acquiescing that nothing was happening. Was worth a shot, Sirius decided. Try it in Latin, Remus said. Ah, worcus yours. That's not Latin. That's barely pig Latin. Sorry, I was asleep when they were teaching that particular dead language. You want to have a go? Apparently Remus wasn't asleep when they were teaching Latin. Did they teach that at Hogwarts? But trying work, operate, or run in Latin, and later Greek didn't help. Operate got it to sing opera, while run had them chasing the thing down. Mr. Weasley ended up coming back to an exhausted room. So if this is all the work muggles have to go through to turn one on, I understand why they never turn it off, Sirius groaned. Harry just decided to quietly help Mr. Weasley with the TV, seeing as how he wasn't sure how to explain the proper workings of the device, especially when that generally extended to plug it in and turn it on. Certainly wasn't sure how he was going to explain an aerial, which the TV was going to need in order to work. Finally meeting Charlie and Bill properly the next day was an experience, though Harry had heard plenty about Charlie from Hagrid, and vice versa, so it was interesting to meet him in real life. Bill, meanwhile, resembled what Harry was pretty sure rock stars would look like if they were wizards, and he found himself wondering that night if maybe he too shouldn't invest in a dragon-tooth earring when he got older. The next day saw Hermione arriving, which necessitated quite a bit of excited catching up, and assuring her that yes, they were done with their homework, and had been for some time now. It also saw the arrival of the Hogwarts owls with their book lists, and an owl for Sirius saying that his designs had been approved, and he would be allowed to start building. That had everyone heading down to Sirius, Lart, the younger wizards collecting along the wall as the older wizards got to work. By the time Mrs. Weasley came along to announce that dinner was ready, there was a huge basement magically dug out with the smaller rocks found transfigured into brick, with several spells and enchantments on it to keep it waterproof, fireproof, and a lot of other proofs that Bill Weasley was especially good at, being a curse-breaker and all. Gonna have to look up the rest of the spells and practice those, Sirius said at dinner. Can't believe I have to study out of school. Do you want the house to collapse on your head? Remus asked. The good news is we should be able to go to the final and still have the house ready before September at the rate we're going, Mr. Weasley said. Bill, what do you think? I can definitely have all the major spells on it before my next assignment, Bill said. If not me, then Percy, if he ever stops talking about thin-bottomed cauldrons. It's important, Percy insisted. Harry, meanwhile, was still of the firm opinion that he loved magic, and sitting at the window in Ron's room looking out at the foundation of the new house, still weird to think of it as his house, much easier to think of it as Sirius. He was pretty sure that this did nothing but enforce that feeling. It's a little weird, thinking of how we're going to have new neighbors, Ron said. Usually wizards in old families stay with their family houses, or if they move out, they move to the city. So there's not wizarding neighborhoods? Harry asked. There's a few, like Godric's Hollow is primarily wizards, but usually we stay out in the sticks to avoid nosy muggle neighbors. Huff a little. I guess when you can travel instantaneously it's not such a big deal. It is if you don't like apparition, Harry said, Snips CRR-ing in agreement. True, Ron agreed, which was when Hermione came in, excitedly talking about building wizard houses, and oh, I bet there's tons of books I wish we could run to Diagon Alley real quick. The three of them discussing the topic, until Mrs. Weasley stuck her head in and ordered them to bed because they had a right early start the next morning, and no amount of coffee will vitalize you if you've only had an hour of sleep. As Harry tried to fall asleep, he wondered what thought excited him more: the Quidditch World Cup final the next day, or the idea of living next door to Ron in a house where he wasn't beleaguered or downtrodden or only referred to as boy. He was leaning towards the latter when he did finally fall asleep, into a nightmare he didn't quite remember upon waking up. It felt problematic, though. Chapter 45, in which cups are finalized. Chapter text: Mrs. Weasley was right. They did have an early start the next morning, as in, the sun wasn't even up yet. And no, coffee was limited in how much it woke them up. Don't forget some breakfast. I'll be doing your school shopping while you're gone, and what are you taking? she demanded as Fred and George came down, stuffed duffel bags in tow. Sirius helped us modify the disguise caps, George said. You can't tell, but they turn your hair orange, Fred said, tipping the bowl cap, now in Irish colors and with a shamrock where the button on top would be. Honestly, we could price gouge, Sirius admitted. You could tell the hat changed his hair. But everyone else is going to be doing that too, so we're sticking with what we calculated would be a profit for it. Arthur, Mrs. Weasley said. Honestly, Marley, I don't see where I can scold them on this, Mr. Weasley said. And it'll probably be one of the least egregious items for sale at the final, which reminds me we need to be going. Can I have one? Harry asked them as they left. I'll pay for it. Of course, Harrikins, Fred said, tugging a cap out and putting it on Harry's head. And you can pay for it by advertising for us, George agreed. Trudging along the ridge helped more insofar as waking them up, even if most of the start of it was spent leaning against each other and trying not to fall back asleep. Snips snapped his tail and bit a couple of times to keep them awake, and by the time they met up with the Diggories, Harry was mostly awake. Harry vaguely remembered Cedric Diggory from the Quidditch match that lost him his Nimbus, and he was heartened by the fact that Cedric also felt that that sucked, even if his dad kept crowing about how his son beat Harry Potter. We'll get a proper rematch this year, though, Cedric told him once his father was out of earshot, before running off and helping the others look for something. Sirius found it first, bounding around an old boot and barking before morphing back into a person. Got it. Harry followed the others over, wasn't sure how to react to the fact that they were all crowded around an old boot that had seen better days and smells. Why is the boot special? Harry asked. It's a portkey, Mr. Weasley said, checking his watch. Everyone gather round. We all need to be touching it in the next. Oh, crud, grab it. Harry would have rather not, but Snips bit his ear at his hesitation and prompted him to latch on with everyone else. The next several seconds felt unhappily like apparition, except with the added bonuses of feeling like someone had hooked him in the gut and then flushed him down the drain. At least he wasn't the only one who disliked the trip. Why? Ron groaned, spitting turf out as he pushed himself up. Couldn't we have flewed? Or apparated, George agreed, brushing down his bag. We're but a handful of hundreds of wizards converging on this very spot, Percy told them. At best, apparition would have people popping in right on top of each other, and flu would have everyone piling up at the grates. Mistakes were made, Mr. Weasley agreed. By the time they had all picked themselves up, and Harry had crossed off portkey as acceptable means of travel, they had been checked in and were heading off to the Irish side of the field in search of their tent, which Harry had high hopes for, seeing how the other tents looked. It became very clear to him that, like the burrow, there was either dozens of enchantments to keep muggles from noticing, or they were so far away that it was only the one family they needed to be concerned about, although Harry wondered why they were bothering enchanting him, seeing as how major concerts and the like were also muggle things, and there was a certain refuge in audacity, as he was learning. Well, if he let it get round, people would be questioning why they hadn't heard of it, now wouldn't they? George asked when he posed that question. I am liking the refuge in audacity, Harry. There's hope for you yet, Fred said. No, Percy said. No, do not follow in their footsteps. You've got a relatively clean record. Don't ruin it now. Now see, Percy, the way we see it, Harry's got a lot to make up for. Oh, no, you don't. No nonsense, or I'll be telling your mother, Mr. Weasley said, and then had to pause the group as Fred and George were stopped to sell a couple of their hats. Already we're having a success, George cheered. Well, I'm glad that's working. What are you planning to do with the profit? Mr. Weasley asked. Pay for school books. And open up a joke shop, Fred added in an underside as they continued on. Remus and Sirius are helping us iron everything out, and Sirius says he's going to fund it. We've got a name down, and now we're just trying to find a good place in Diagon Alley to set up. So you were actually doing something in your room all this time? Charlie asked. We just figured you liked the noise, Ginny added. The noise is a bonus, George said. By this time they had reached their tent, Mr. Weasley hustling everyone in and telling them to get settled before going off. Don't get lost, by the way. Harry ducked in behind Hermione, had to take a moment at the sight of the inside of the tent, much bigger than on the outside, with beds and a kitchenette and a dining table and a stove. Very comfy, very homey. I love magic, Harry said, grinning. And it loves you too, Fred said. Well, we're off. Must sell these before the game starts. They'll be back in 5 minutes, Sirius assured Mr. Weasley. The twins were indeed back before Harry, Ron, and Hermione were back with the water. Mr. Weasley insisted on doing it like muggles do in spite of a working tap in the tent. Sirius sitting by the tent with an extra bag and selling caps to people that Harry had pointed this way. They were also talking to someone that Mr. Weasley introduced as Ludo Bagman, who was happy to wager against the twins, to Mr. Weasley's displeasure. Ireland wins, but Crumb gets the snitch, Sirius repeated as Bagman left. You two know something the rest of us don't. Crumb's the best seeker, but Ireland has the better team all around, Fred explained. I see. Mooney, keep an eye on the product. I have to find a bookie real quick. You have money. You don't need to gamble, Sirius, Remus sighed, burying his face in his hands as a big dog bounded off. It was worth noting that the hat remained when he transformed and turned all his fur orange to boot. Harry shrugged and ducked into the tent for refreshments and to get out of the sun, and enjoyed a soda as he sat in on Hermione, informing Mr. Weasley and Percy of the dangers of relying on litter for portkeys, as muggles had started taking a very strong stance on littering and were oftentimes taking it upon themselves to keep areas clean. So perhaps we'll have to put some anti-muggle spells on them too, Percy said, making a face as he took notes, to give to Mr. Crouch. He informed them all and puffing up a bit as he did so. And they take this trash to landfills, Mr. Weasley asked. Well, they can't just vanish the garbage like wizards can, Hermione said. People have been working to figure out how to better dispose of their garbage, and recycling is really starting to pick up, but it's been slow going. By the time the topic was exhausted, Sirius had come back, and evidently must have had some luck in finding someone to make the wager with, considering the way his tail was wagging. And by the time the sun was going down and everyone was moving to the stadium, the hats were all sold and the money safely tucked away in an expanding inside pocket. We got the idea from Muggle Comics, Fred explained, patting the outside of the pocket. It's called Hammer Space. But do you have a hammer in there? Sirius asked. The twins did, which had Sirius talking with Remus about doing an inside pocket as they joined the throngs heading for the stadium. So how did they do this? Harry asked as said stadium started to dominate the view. Is it like with the house, where they just sort of transfigured stuff and they'll turn it all back when they're done? Percy was more than eager to explain the why and how of the stadium, how it had taken the whole year to put together, and was coated in anti-muggle spells and other protective spells, such as bludger retrieval. Mistakes had been made. After a while, Harry and Hermione were the only ones paying attention, and by the time they started heading up the stairs, Harry's brain had gone FZZZT, and he decided to just accept that it was magic and leave it at that. Climbing up to their seats was not without incident, though, seeing as how they ran into the Malfoys. Harry was reasonably sure that witnesses were the only reason nobody in the two passing stairwells tried to hex each other, although Harry was pretty sure that Malfoy's crack at the Weasley house made that a dangerously close possibility. The Minister of Magic, being one of those witnesses, probably cemented this. The Malfoys are here as my guests, Fudge explained. Made a sizable donation to St. Mungo's recently, been doing such good charity work as of late. Joy, Sirius noised, gave Mrs. Malfoy a curt nod. Sissy. Mrs. Malfoy looked like the foul smell she had scented had worsened, and Harry was really starting to feel the heavy awkwardness and the bottleneck building behind their respective parties. How's Buckbeak doing? He blurted out, desperate for a subject change. Draco Malfoy, having the unfortunate position of being sandwiched between his parents, flinched before jumping for the subject change. Buckbeak's doing fine. We have our house elf watching him while we're here. Yes, and you will resist calling him for the umpteenth time just to check in on that ridiculous bird, Mr. Malfoy hissed under his breath. I'm guessing you're not helping with him, Mr. Malfoy, Harry said before he could think it through, since I doubt he lets you near him. Sirius and Remus had a hot debate after that particular burn sent everyone on their way. We can't be rewarding sass. We're responsible adults. We have to set a standard, Remus said, gesturing with his hands pressed together. It seems a shame to ignore such a good backhand, though, Sirius said. Yes, I agree, but we're supposed to be setting a good example. We can't do that and reward appropriate sass. There was a long silence between them as they debated this. Both, both, both. Both is good, Sirius said, nodding. Chapter 46, in which elves are helpful. Chapter text: the actual Quidditch match was awesome, and Harry was pretty sure that he'd be seriously considering a career in Quidditch for a while. Was definitely itching to get back to the Hogwarts Quidditch pitch so he could practice some of those moves they had seen. It was well into the night before any of them decided to retire, Ginny having to do to falling asleep and spilling her hot chocolate, the rest of them following soon after. Harry was looking forward to pleasant dreams, had those shattered sitting bolt upright as Sirius leaped to his feet, growling in the direction of the tent flap. "What? What is it?" Ron asked, flailing for his wand. "Probably the Irish getting their pride on," Fred groaned, rolling over. "Go back to sleep." Percy grumbled, untangling himself from his bed and heading for the tent flap. "Gonna tell them off." Blatant disregard for the statute of secrecy. "It's not the Irish," Mr. Weasley said, already at the tent flap. Something in his tone shocked Harry fully awake. "What is it?" "It's bad," Mr. Weasley said, running back in and shaking them awake and out of bed. "Hurry up. No, don't bother getting dressed, just get your shoes, and your wands. I am giving you permission to use them." "What's going on?" Harry asked, panic starting to set in fully as Snips darted for his shoulders. Looked sharply at the sound of an explosion and screaming. "Listen," Remus said, a hand on his shoulder as the adults started herding the kids together. "When we get out, you kids need to run for the woods, okay? It'll be easier for you to hide there. We'll come find you when it's safe." "Someone please answer the question," Ron demanded. Sirius finally shifted back to human form, wand at the ready, still snarling. "Death Eaters." That stilled everyone, Harry making the connection a few seconds later, recalling Sirius explaining about Voldemort's followers after everything with Pettigrew. "Okay, kids, get ready. We're going to need you to run," Mr. Weasley said. "Harry, hurry up." "I can't find my wand," Harry said, scrambling at his bed and clothing. "Akio, Harry's wand," Remus said frantically. Harry's panic deepened when nothing happened. "We'll find it later," Charlie said, shoving them towards the tent flap. "Look, when we say run, you run." Why became clear as soon as they were out, Hermione grabbing Harry's hand and taking off, Harry grabbing Ron and Ron grabbing Ginny as Fred and George tore after them, the adults heading the other way, towards fire, towards masked wizards levitating the Muggle family that lived nearby high above the ground. "That is sick," Ron muttered, staring back. "That is so sick." By then they were deep in the woods, focusing on not tripping, stumbling into a clearing and against each other, clinging tightly, everyone but Harry with their wands pointing outwards. Harry hadn't really thought too much about what would happen if he were ever wandless, but now that he had that reality crashing down hard on him, realizing how vulnerable he really was, all the spells he knew were useless without a way to use them. Ow. What? Ron squawked, trying to see everywhere at once. "Snips," Harry hissed, cut off quickly when the little bat-like creature clung to his face, doing his level best to stare him down. Deep breath. "Okay, fine, get off," Harry said, peeling Snips off his face. "Now what? We wait," Hermione asked, voice wavering. "For now," George said. Hey, it's okay, Gin, we'll keep you safe," he said, hugging his sniffling sister close. "This is not going on my list of favorite days anymore," Ginny said thickly. "Granted, it's not making our top 10 either," Fred said, yelped when a rock came sailing his way. "Will you shut up? Malfoy," Harry squawked, recognizing the other boy as he stuck his head in the clearing. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, you know this is the latest new spot. What do you think?" Malfoy hissed back, gesturing the way they had come. "And no, I'm not stopping here, and you shouldn't either. Especially you, Granger." "Since when do you care?" Hermione asked. "They're hunting muggles, and they're not going to be making any distinctions with Muggleborns or blood traitors. Perhaps we will acknowledge this advice," Fred said, waving his wand a little. "Come on, deeper in. You too, Malfoy." Malfoy seemed a little confused by this inclusion, shot one last look through the trees before following. Why would someone attack the final, though? Harry wondered aloud as they ventured deeper into the woods. "There's tons of wizards here, loads of ministry officials. It has to be the worst place to attack right now." "Drunk, my guess," Ron said, "or stupid." Malfoy looked like he dearly wanted to comment but refrained. "But so long as they have those poor muggles, no one can do anything to them," Hermione said. "If they attack those people, then they'll fall." Dad and the others'll sort them out, George said. Think we're far enough in yet. Something fairly close exploded, a deep groaning reaching them. Harry connected it with a tree falling right as the splintering crash of it connecting with the ground happened. That would be a no, dear Georgie, Fred said. Pity Percy went the other way. He could have at least apparated Ginny out of harm's way first. Granted, if you want to start splitting hairs, everyone else could have apparated all of us out of the way first. I blame sleepiness and panic. Agreed. This isn't helping us, Ginny pointed out. Talking staves off the slow descent into madness. Or hysteria, Fred added. Ow, Harry barked. What Snips? Snips flew over to Ginny's head, since she was next to Fred and George, and their lit wands bounced up and down before tugging two feathers out and miming groveling. Not sure how that helps us, Ron said. Snip sighed, stamped on Ginny's head twice. 2 words, Ginny offered. Okay, first word 2. Are we seriously playing charades in a forest with whatever that thing is? Malfoy demanded. This too helps stave off the madness, George said. I think it's achieving the opposite. Harry, however, felt he had pieced enough together to figure out what Snips was after. The summer before second year, he said. How I got to the burrow. Snips pointed at Harry. Oh, right, Ron said. Except we don't have a house elf. I mean Sirius has Creature, Harry said. But I don't, Master Harry asked for Creature. Harry and the rest of them yelped and leaped back at Creature's sudden appearance behind him. Creature? But why how? Master Harry called for Creature. Creature said, bowing. Master Harry talked Master Sirius into letting Creature preserve the Black family heirlooms. Creature is indebted, he is. Harry noised, not sure how to take this, or the fact that Creature looked worlds better now, certainly not like the pile of dirty rags he had resembled before. Aye, we can talk about that later, he said at the sound of another explosion. Listen, Creature, we're in danger here. Can you transport us somewhere safer like the burrow? Creature considered the group before him. Creature would have to make several trips. Start with Ginny and Hermione, please. Harry, while I appreciate the chivalry, I think you should go before me, Hermione said as Creature went to Ginny. I still have my wand, you don't. What do you mean you don't have your wand? Malfoy demanded. It was chaotic and dark, and we really don't have time for this right now, Harry countered, wincing at the sound of another explosion. Unless you have a way to speed this up. Malfoy glanced at Creature, blinked like something occurred to him. Wait, Darby. Another crack, and then another very familiar house elf appeared. Master Draco, Buckbeak has been fed and brushed and has fresh straw still like the last time you asked, Darby said, bowing and wringing his hands. Buckbeak is also asleep, sir, so. Wait, Darby, Harry squawked, making the house elf jump. Harry Potter, sir, Darby squeaked, glancing rapidly between Harry and Malfoy. Wait, how do you know my house elf? Malfoy demanded. Ha, Ron barked, pointing. I told you it was Malfoy. We can have this conversation later, Fred said loudly as another tree fell. Right, Darby, can you help Creature get us all to the burrow? It's an emergency. Part of that's my house elf, I give him orders. Malfoy spat at him, thought about it a second before giving Darby a surly look. What he said? Darby nodded and bowed. Of course, sirs. Right, Hermione, Harry said, looking at her. Fine, but you go with Darby, Hermione said, pointing at him. How does everyone know my house elf? Malfoy demanded. Later, Harry said, accepting Darby's hand, Malfoy taking the other. Hurry back, Ron said, glancing nervously at where red was starting to seep through the trees. There was a crack, and then they were right in front of the burrow, Hermione thanking Creature before running for them. Thanks, Darby, Harry said. Can you get Ron too? I think Creature is getting Fred and George. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, Darby added to Malfoy before blinking away. Is there a way to apparate like house elves do? Harry asked, still staring at the spot where Darby disappeared, because it seems a lot less fussy than regular apparition. Go back to you knowing my house elf, Malfoy demanded. Summer before second year, Darby shows up at my aunt and uncle's telling me not to come back to Hogwarts, Harry said. I think he found out about the diary and figured I'd be in the most danger. After that he gave me a lift to the burrow. Malfoy arched an eyebrow. After my uncle gave me a pair of black eyes, Harry added. So I'm going to say Darby viewed it as an emergency. What's your uncle doing giving you a shiner? Malfoy asked. Let's just say my uncle has strong opinions on magic in general, house elves in his house in particular, and me especially. But that's over now, Hermione said, looking over at Fred, George, and Ron appearing, 2 house elves with them. Ginny had already run into the house, which had prompted Mrs. Weasley to come out to check them all over. "Oh, thank goodness you're all right. The clerk had you all at mortal peril. Is that everyone? Where's Arthur, Bill, Charlie, Percy?" "They're helping stop those guys," Harry offered. Creature, I'm not sure if you can check in on them and make sure they're all right without putting yourself in danger." "Creature appreciates the concern," Creature said. "Master Sirius is not dead, if that helps." Creature would have felt him go. How? Because Creature serves the Black House. That didn't clear things up for Harry at all. "Well, can you check at least? And if everything's calmed down, let them know that we're all safe at the burrow." "Creature can do this," Creature said, bowing before disappearing. "Thank you," Harry yelled, not sure if Creature heard. Turned to look at Malfoy, who looked discomfited at Mrs. Weasley checking him over for injuries as well. Darby, you can let Mum know I'm all right," Malfoy muttered to Darby. "Yes, sir," Darby said, bowing at him before bowing at Harry and the others. "It was good to see you again, sirs and ma'ams. Despite the fact that this is the first time most of us have ever seen him," Ron said, "and seeing as how we're all safe and sound, I was right that was Malfoy's house elf." "Is now really the time to be gloating?" Hermione demanded. "Of course." Get inside, all of you," Mrs. Weasley said, scanning the garden as she shooed them in like those goons had followed them somehow. "Oh, I hope the others are okay." "I'm sure they're fine, Mrs. Weasley," Harry offered, despite not knowing if that was truthful. "Yeah, Mum, Charlie wrestles dragons all day and Bill's a curse-breaker," George offered. "Don't forget Percy talking them to death about thin-bottomed cauldrons," Fred added. "Right, those Death Eaters won't know what hit them." "Death Eaters," Mrs. Weasley exclaimed. "I didn't tell her that part, George," Ginny said. "So we gathered," Fred said. "What are Death Eaters doing at the final?" Mrs. Weasley demanded. "That, with all that security, how did they even get in?" "They bought tickets just like everyone else," Malfoy muttered, arms crossed as he stared sullenly at the floor. Eventually, though, Mrs. Weasley got them all sat and served hot chocolate as they told her what happened, her constantly going back to the clock and fretfully checking the hands. Harry could understand after looking at the clock itself. Instead of regular hands, it had hands for every Weasley, and currently 4 of them were pointed at mortal peril. It wasn't very comforting. They had just about finished their story when Creature popped back in. "Master Sirius, Remus Lupin, and the Weasleys are all right," he reported. "They are staying to help with the mess left, but wish to compliment you on your quick thinking." This with a general nod at them. "Thank you," Harry said in the midst of gusted sighs of relief, which then switched to yips of alarm when Darby popped in. "Mistress Malfoy wants you home, sir," Darby said, tugging on Malfoy's robe. Malfoy fiddled with his mug a moment, like he was debating, before nodding and standing. "Thank you for the hot chocolate," he muttered. "Say hi to Buckbeak for us," Harry offered. Malfoy nodded curtly, Darby giving them all a little wave before they both disappeared. "Is it just me, or is Malfoy less of a git than when we first started?" Ron asked. "Because I'm not sure how to handle this." "It's called growth, Ron," Hermione said. "Maybe he's started to be around positive environments that are showing him what he's been taught isn't right. Or maybe it was just a lot of gitness for an 11-year-old and not so much for a 13 or 14-year-old, Fred said. "Oh yes, you should have seen yourself when you were 2, George agreed. "You're much more agreeable now that your body-to-personality ratio is more balanced." "Well, at least I can sleep a little easier tonight," Mrs. Weasley said, straightening up from where she had been questioning Creature on the various Weasleys' health. "But as for the rest of you, bed. The others won't be back until morning." Remus Lupin had also requested that I inform Master Harry that his wand has been recovered, Creature said to Harry. "That's great. Where was it?" Harry asked. Remus Lupin said that he would discuss that when he got back, Creature said, bowing. "May Creature get Master Harry a nightcap?" No, thank you, Creature. You've already been a ton of help." "Creature lives to serve," Creature said, before disappearing. "So for the record, I'm not sure if a house elf would be worth all the fuss," Ron said, looking at where Creature had vanished. "Like, sure, they're more useful than ghouls, but I don't think I'd ever get used to the way they pop in and out like that." "You're talking about a living being, Ron," Hermione said. "Being living is a reason for me to talk nice about them." "All those spiders you've slandered," George said, making Ron shudder. "Bed," Mrs. Weasley ordered. Chapter 47, in which charming discussions are had. Chapter text Sirius, Remus, and the remaining Weasleys arrived early the next morning along with the paper, which screamed the headline terror at the cup final. "What's that in the picture?" Harry asked, looking at the black and white photograph. "That be the dark mark," Sirius explained, letting Percy take the paper. "Being Moldivaldi's symbol. That doesn't mean you know who was there, does it?" Hermione asked. "No, the Death Eaters know how to cast it, so it was likely one of them. Except for the bit where they all scattered when it went up. And it went up in an entirely different spot. By the way, Harry," Remus said, holding something out. "My wand," Harry exclaimed, taking it. "Where'd you find it? It jabbed me in the back and scared me half to death. Apparently the summoning charm had a delayed reaction. Moony cleared a good 3 feet. It was impressive," Sirius said, cleared at least a foot when a sharp crack sounded. "Master Sirius has returned," Creature said, bowing. "We will now make breakfast." "I now wait, Creature. You don't have to," Mrs. Weasley protested. "Madam Weasley should probably sit and relax." "You do look pale, Molly," Mr. Weasley said. "Didn't you get any sleep at all last night?" "Well, how could I?" she demanded. "With half of you off and in potential danger, all right, fine," she sighed, sagging. "But don't overexert yourself, Creature." "Creature will try not to," Creature said, levitating a stool over to the counter so he could reach it. Sirius watched him, utterly bemused, finally shrugged and sat down. "So anyway, Remus wants to have a lecture on keeping track of your wand, but I feel like last night was enough of a motivator," Sirius said. "Moving on." "Oh, that Skeeter woman," Percy hissed, balling up the newspaper. "Cheers, Percy," Charlie said. "Not like anyone else wanted to read that." "No, you don't." Skeeter called the whole event a travesty of ministry security. To hear her talk, the ministry wasn't even there. She claims there were bodies being taken out of the woods. "What?" Molly asked, losing what little color she had regained. "No one died, Molly," Mr. Weasley said, accepting the 2 mugs Creature handed him. Creature, do me a favor and fetch the fire whiskey. It's in that top cabinet there." Creature took a moment to consider Mrs. Weasley before nodding. "Certainly, sir." "So Creature mellowed out in his old age, and I'm not sure how to take it," Sirius said. "So what did happen after we left?" Ron asked. "Mayhem, maybe shenanigans. We finally got the muggles down. They needed some serious memory modifications." "Serious meaning someone else did it," Sirius added. "There was some sort of altercation after the fact," Bill said, chin in his hand. "Barty Crouch sacked his house elf." "What? Why?" Hermione asked. "We found her unconscious in one of the rows. Looked like she had been knocked out, almost directly under the dark mark. Discarded wand next to her. Amos Diggory thought she might have stolen a wand and cast it." "But why would a house elf summon the dark mark?" Percy demanded, throwing his hands up. "Better yet, why would Barty Crouch's house elf summon the dark mark?" "Well, Barty Jr. was a Death Eater," Sirius said. "But Barty Jr. is also dead," Mr. Weasley pointed out. "Died in Azkaban. I'm aware he was a few doors down from me, and considering he, who must not be named, faked his death, I wouldn't be surprised if it was catching." "Go back to the house elf," Hermione said. "Why would she steal a wand and cast that spell? It doesn't make sense. She was terrified up in that box. She could have been out because she was trying to get away from the explosions." "Madam Hermione is right," Creature said from beside her, startling her, put a plate of French toast in front of her before continuing. "House elves wouldn't touch a wizard's wand, have no need for them. We have our own magic." "Thank you again for that, Creature," Harry said. "Creature lives to serve. So as supporting evidence for the Barty Jr. is alive and well theory Barty Sr. helped fake the death, realized that he got loose and was still nutty, and blamed his house elf to cover his tracks." "So she's being punished for someone else's mistakes," Hermione said hotly. "If Barty Jr. is alive," Mr. Weasley said loudly. "But it's not fair. Someone should do something about this." "Here's the sad thing. Fairness often has nothing to do with it," Remus said. "As for someone doing something about it, I'm not sure what all you could do about it." "Reject humanity and become a dog full-time," Sirius suggested. "Sirius, no, for the umpteenth time, no. You get fleas like that." "That is the main negative to the decision," Sirius agreed, perked up when Creature put a plate in front of him. "Ah, thank you, Creature. Listen, we should be good now, so if you want to take a load off, you can." "Master is too kind," Creature said, bowing before vanishing with a crack. Sirius stared at the place where he was, finally looked at the rest of them. "I want you all to know that that is the exact opposite of how he was when I was growing up," Sirius said, pointing where Creature had been. "And I have no idea how to take this now." "With aplomb," Remus suggested. Percy and Mr. Weasley were rare sights in the following days, as they were kept busy at the ministry, trying to fix the broken mess the final had ended up being. Also a rare sight was a professor during summer, which was why Harry was a little surprised to see Professor Dumbledore sitting at the kitchen table with Sirius, Remus, and Bill one morning when he came down for breakfast. "Ah, Harry," Dumbledore greeted. "Enjoying your summer?" "Mostly," Harry said, sitting down. Asking what he was doing here might be too blunt, spotted something else to ask. "You got a quick quotes quill?" "Yes. Miss Lovegood recommended I get one to assist with my day planning. This is Quincy, who has been informed by Madame Pomfrey after my yearly checkup that I am to take scheduled breaks, as I am no longer a young man of 51. This was a surprise to me, as most days I feel 47, but I'll allow for it, as it's never good to anger a healer. "Mornin'," Ron yawned, coming down, stopped dead at the sight at the table. "Professor Dumbledore, what are you doing here, sir?" he added, spotting Mrs. Weasley's expression. "As to that question, I am assisting with finalizing the charms on the new black abode," Dumbledore said. "If everything is to your liking, Phileas and I will be along." Sometime," he said, looking at the little book that Quincy was tapping against. "To finalize and then cast the spells, probably not next week." "Well, term starts next week, so that makes sense," Bill said. "But before the end of September, I've got a job scheduled then." "So before the end of September," Dumbledore told Quincy. "Also keeping in mind mine and Phileas' schedules. And the phases of the moon, for multiple reasons," Remus said. "That too." "Alas, no students qualifying for alchemy this year does not equate to me having any extra time," he sighed, looking at his schedule. "We might have to sacrifice one of the scheduled breaks." "You teach alchemy at Hogwarts?" Harry asked, confused. "Like turning lead into gold, that alchemy." "There were reasons I helped Nicholas with his stone," Dumbledore said. "It's a new elective that I teach personally, but since the prerequisites are so high, most students don't qualify. I've flirted with lowering the requirements over the years, but alas, alchemy can be disastrous when done poorly." "What are the prerequisites?" "Oh, let me think. Owls in potions, ancient runes, arithmancy, herbology, astronomy, charms, and transfiguration, all requiring the O grade, and also requiring that students continue in those courses at Newt level. As you can imagine, very few students manage." "Bet 10 galleons Hermione gets in," Ron offered. "Gets in what?" Hermione asked, coming in from the garden along with Ginny. "Okay, for the record, I don't want the Fidelis charm on the house," Sirius said, tapping a finger on the parchment he and Remus had been consulting. "I had a bad experience with that one." "Understandable," Dumbledore said, taking the parchment and tapping the same spot with his wand as Ron explained what they had learned about alchemy class to Hermione. That would affect this charm and this charm, I think suggestions for a replacement Mr. Weasley. Oh dear, he noised, when he realized this attracted the attention of quite a few Weasleys. Bill. Well, that's a lot better than that time you called me by my uncle's name, Bill said. I told Percy when he started that he needed a name tag. To be fair, there's been quite a few Weasleys over the years, Dumbledore admitted. Fear Fred and George felt foiled when they started, and I only referred to them by last name. Although considering what I thought were twins or a quintuplet, I feel as though I were the one foiled in the end. Considering I accidentally called Harry James the other day, the name confusion is understandable, Sirius said. Although in my defense, it was before coffee and I was dog-tired. You serious you turn into a dog, you're always dog-tired, Remus said. Nonsense. Sometimes I'm seriously tired. What? Mrs. Weasley asked, apparently registering what Dumbledore had said. Now wait a minute, I'm pretty sure I would remember having 5 kids at once. Now, Mum, don't tell us you don't remember Donald, Fred said, coming down. Or Hubert, George rejoined. Or Edmund. That reminds me, those 3 didn't sit their owls, Dumbledore said. We're really going to have to talk to them about slacking off like that. Don't feel too bad about not hearing about them before, Professor, Charlie said, sitting at the table. We don't really talk about them much because they disgrace the Weasley name, not being Gryffindors and all. And one being a Slytherin to boot, Bill agreed. Even Cousin Moe didn't go and do that. That's the squib cousin I told you about one time, Ron told Harry and Hermione. I think he's an accountant. Think he'd have better luck explaining how to get the TV working, Harry asked. Doubtful. Eventually, though, the charms list was finalized, and Dumbledore left, assuring them he and Professor Flitwick would be along whenever we can manage to unsnarl this rather busy year. Mrs. Weasley had them focusing on packing for school the next couple of days, saying she didn't want to be scrambling around last minute, especially with the rain threatening. Creature, meanwhile, kept trying to sneak around and iron everyone's clothes. Harry decided to put his umbrella in his tote bag along with his new books. Sirius, meanwhile, had something for them the day before they left. So we've discussed it and agreed that this is considered a justifiable necessity and doesn't count towards the list of pre-spoiling gifts, Sirius said, taking something out of a shopping bag and handing it to Harry. We've gotten one for everyone. You really didn't have to, Mrs. Weasley said. Technically, since it's a safety concern, we did, Remus told her. Barty's house elf could have, theoretically, snitched any of our wands, he said, leaning away from a steamed-looking Hermione. Still say Barty, Jr. Did it somehow? Sirius insisted. Thank you, but what is it? Harry asked. That, my dear godson, is a wand holster, Sirius said, pointing at it. You can strap it to your belt or to your wrist for ease of access, and it's enchanted so that only the one who put it in can pull it back out. Go on, give it a go. Harry did, several of the Weasleys testing it before passing the wand holster back to Harry, who was able to pull it back out no problem. Does this mean Harry's the rightful King of England, I wonder? Fred said. What do you wish of us, your Majesty? George asked, grinning. This is brilliant, thank you, Harry said to Sirius. And one for everyone else, too, so we don't have to hear old Moody complaining about improper wand storage. One for Arthur, too, when he gets back, speaking of, Sirius said, as he handed out the rest of the bag's contents. You don't have to, Mrs. Weasley said when Sirius tried to hand her one. This will cut down on the fake wand incidents, he told her. Mrs. Weasley looked back at the counter, where the wand she had grabbed was still a rubber chicken. Back to Sirius. Gimme. Some people just don't appreciate fine craftsmanship, George sighed. And it even has a pulley in the middle. Fred said, gesturing. Harry made sure to test his wand before putting it away that night. Chapter 48, in which stormy weather happens. Chapter text. The next morning was still rainy and only promised to increase in intensity as the day wore on, prompting Harry to have his umbrella out immediately, regretting as they rode to King's Cross in the crowded Ford Anglia that he wouldn't be able to use it at the station due to its obviously magical nature. At the very least, they were able to pull up close to unload, and were helped by one of the station guards who spotted them struggling in the deluge. Here now, I recognize this bird, the guard said as Harry tugged the sweater aside to check on Hedwig. Aren't you the lad that ran into the station divider a few years back? Yeah, sorry, Harry said, wincing at the memory. I'll try to be more careful this time. See that you do, the man said, looking over the various school trunks amassing in the foyer. Off to school then, I see. Which is it? I have a cousin whose kid is looking into secondary schools. It's the best of its kind in Britain, Harry said truthfully. Might have to look it up, he said, peering at the Hogwarts logo before waving them off, adjusting his slicker before heading to help the next group. Don't leave your car parked there for more than 15 minutes, he called back to Mr. Weasley. Harrikins, I think you might have a point with the refuge in Audacity bit, Fred said, watching the man go. Yes, George agreed as they started filing in. How'd you do it? Everyone on Privet Drive is super nosy, Harry explained. Eventually you learn how to bend the truth enough to answer their questions. Ah, so it's born of necessity. Still workable, Fred said. Okay, Mrs. Weasley said once they were on platform 9¾ I want you all on your best behavior this year. Prank responsibly, Sirius offered. Do not cause any trouble that you can't get away with. Remus talked to him. We're supposed to be good influences, Sirius, Remus told him. Sirius noised. Do your homework and eat your vegetables. Better. We might be seeing you guys later, Charlie told them. Lots of interesting things going on at Hogwarts this year. Like what? Ginny asked. Sorry, sis, can't tell you. You'll be figuring it out soon enough, Bill said. Figuring what out? Ron asked as they were shooed onto the train. Now remember to hang out your dress robes at least a day before you have to wear them, and if there's any wrinkles you should be able to steam it, Mrs. Weasley said. Dress robes? Harry asked blankly. But by then the train was starting to leave, and any further conversation was relegated to saying goodbye and promising to write often. "I have a real bad feeling about this year," Ron said once they were underway. "Maybe dress robes are a requirement for fourth years." Hermione asked, looking at Fred and George. "This would be news to us," George said. "Very true. Come, Georgie must find Fergus and Lisa we can discuss matters of import," Fred said. "Betcha 10 galleons my dress robes are maroon," Ron said once Fred, George, and Ginny dispersed. "Don't bet on a sure thing," Ginny called back. "Come on, let's just find a seat," Hermione said, waving for them to follow. As per usual, most of the compartments were full, leaving them to poke their heads in and see if there was any space, and frequently saying hi to people they knew. "Hi, Malfoy," Harry said, recognizing the blonde head as they walked past. "How's Buckbeak? Is he staying home?" "No," Blaise Zabini moaned, covering his ears and curling up. "No, I'm going to have to hear about hippogriffs all year. Do not start him early." "You'll hear about hippogriffs, and you will like it, Zabini," Malfoy said, pointing at him dramatically before directing his attention back at Harry. "Darby's taking Buckbeak to Hogsmeade, and then to Hagrid so I can take care of him during the school year. Hagrid sent a note saying it would count as extra credit," he added, glancing out the window. "I just hope it's not raining at Hogwarts. Buckbeak hates getting wet." "Oh, we can't have that," Pansy Parkinson said scathingly. "Out, Parkinson." Harry, Ron, and Hermione continued down the opposite way of Pansy, who was darkly muttering about finding Millicent Bulstrode and hoping she doesn't talk about that stupid cat of hers. "I feel like there might be more of a reason for Malfoy bringing Buckbeak to school," Hermione said once they had found a compartment, taking the window seat as Ron plopped down and fished out his portable chess set. "Besides the note?" Ron asked. "Yes. Remember how Mr. Malfoy looked when Malfoy brought Buckbeak up?" "I bet Malfoy wrote Hagrid asking if he could bring Buckbeak, and Hagrid agreed." "We can ask when we have tea with him," Harry said. The rest of the journey passed mostly without incident. Neville joined them after a while and thanked Harry for the birthday gift, agreeing that the book title was funny, and was regaled by Ron and Harry about the Quidditch World Cup as the rain increased outside, bringing night early. "I think Buckbeak probably got wet," Harry observed as they pulled their robes on. "I hope someone has enough sense to stop Malfoy before he tries to sneak to the stables in this," Hermione observed. "Malfoy's not that stupid," Ron said. Harry wasn't sure, especially as they left the train and he saw Malfoy's face. Although, to be fair, everyone looked dismayed at the weather, and more than one person was eyeing the first years with pity. "Hey, Hagrid," Harry called, recognizing the gamekeeper currently wearing a massive slicker. "All right, Harry," Hagrid called back. "See you at the feast if we drown. Come on, you lost furs years this way." Harry was fervently glad that they were taking closed carriages to the castle, but wasn't looking forward to getting out at the other end, seeing as how his umbrella nearly got ripped out of his hands by a strong gust of wind. As it was, he and Neville spent most of the trip up getting it facing right side in again and tapping it with a reparo for good measure. Eventually, though, the moment they all dreaded arrived, as did they at the castle steps. The wind and the rain had not died down, and it was several long minutes before the first students finally decided that there was no recourse for it and bolted for their best guess of the front steps. "Well, we might as well," Ron sighed, bracing himself before flinging the door open. Harry kept a tight hold of his closed umbrella as they ran for the safety of the castle, Hermione clinging to his free hand in an attempt to stay upright in the howling winds. Finally made it inside only for Peeves to hit them with several water balloons. "You know that's pointless, right?" Harry asked, in his best guess as to Peeves' general direction, wiping water out of his eyes. "We're already soaked." "Ah, but it's fun for me now, isn't it?" Peeves asked, juggling several more balloons before tossing them up. Harry had his umbrella opened and over his head before the water balloons came down. "Ha ha!" Professor McGonagall arrived and chased Peeves off before he could retaliate, fortunately. "You know, opening an umbrella indoors is bad luck, right?" Dean Thomas asked Harry as he closed the umbrella again. "I figure this was extenuating circumstances," Harry said. The sorting and feast were impressive, the former due to the fact that Colin's brother Dennis was starting that year and had apparently fallen into the lake and was rescued by the giant squid, and the latter due to the storm still raging overhead. Harry spent most of the meal watching the storm, enjoying the fact that he could do so without getting wet or struck by lightning, and therefore missed most of Hermione's indignance at learning that house elves did all the work at Hogwarts. "I told you this second year, Hermione," Harry said, attention still mostly on the light show above their heads. "But it's not fair," Hermione protested, apparently more sensitive to this topic now after the incident at the final. "Why can't they get the same rights that we do? Wages, vacations, pensions?" "Because they're house elves," Ron asked. "I mean they technically fall under a different species, like centaurs do." "And you heard what Creature said. They don't need wands. Look at how he and Darby got us out of the woods at the final." Hermione apparently decided that she was going to stop eating then and there and ignore them both for the rest of the evening, which didn't bother Harry as much as he thought it probably should. Finding out that their new defense teacher was Mad-Eye Moody, complete with dramatic entrance, would have made the highlight of the evening if it weren't for the fact that Dumbledore announced the Triwizard Tournament immediately afterwards. Chapter 49, in which house elves are campaigned for. Chapter text after sending the letter to Sirius and Remus telling them about the Triwizard Tournament and giving them a hard time for knowing about it and not sharing. Harry and Ron headed for the library to do what probably everyone was doing, looking up information on the tournament and the Goblet of Fire. Unfortunately, everyone was indeed doing the same thing, as with during their second year and the Chamber of Secrets. No information on either the Triwizard Tournament or the Goblet of Fire was available. "Hermione's probably read everything about it, though," Ron said, as they fell back on their usual activity in the library, namely, once again trying to figure out what Snips was. Care of Magical Creatures seemed focused on blast-ended Scroots this year, so he wasn't expecting too much on strange little potions-loving creatures on that end, although Hagrid told them that he was still looking. Dumbledore was still looking too, as he informed Harry when Harry encountered him in a corridor and asked, "I have been making inquiries over this past summer, among other things," Dumbledore said. "And I sent a memory of Snips to my friend Newt Scamander. If anyone would know about any fantastic beast or how to find someone who did, it would be him." Defense was notable due to Moody showing them the unforgivable curses, which had scarred quite a few of them. And after the second creatures, lesson cemented the fact that yes, Scroots were the topic of interest this year, more than a few people, Ron included, asked Malfoy if they could get in on the extra credit with Buckbeak instead. "Sorry, but it's an exclusive club," Malfoy said haughtily, arms crossed. "Reserved only." "Can I get in?" Harry decided to try. Malfoy considered him. "Yes, but only because you've actually been polite about the subject instead of bellyaching about it like some people. You talk about it all day, and we don't even have Quidditch to get your mind off of it," Blaise moaned. "Talk about something else, like sneaking into the Triwizard Tournament." "You two trying for it?" Malfoy asked. "Maybe," Ron said. "If Fred and George can figure out a way around whatever age restriction Dumbledore put in. What about you, Harry?" No," Harry said, realizing he hadn't given it much thought since that first night of daydreaming. "Honestly, I'm looking forward to a nice quiet year for once. Let everything happen to someone else for once." Blaise nodded once. "Understandable. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have runes to get to after an hour of hippogriff-free discussions." Harry wondered how Blaise handled learning about the hippogriff rune that class. In other news, Harry wasn't quite used to having someone to have regular correspondence with. But after the first letter from Remus telling him that Sirius kept spending his days sitting next to the mailbox in dog form, Harry made sure to write at least once a week. Neither Sirius or Remus had ever heard of Scroots either, but Dumbledore and Professor Flitwick had managed to come over one weekend to help with the wards on the house, and Progress Proper was underway. Sirius predicted that they'd be able to have a Christmas party in the house. Dumbledore had already agreed to hook up the headmaster fireplace to the Weasley fireplace, just in case, but they were both hopeful that they could do it direct to the new black fireplace. Asking them to say hi to Creature for him had resulted in Hedwig bringing a pot of French onion soup courtesy of Creature, complete with a note saying that Master Harry is too kind, but also too thin. Please eat more. Apparently he had also written a note to the Hogwarts house elves, since whenever Harry sat down at meals, now several extra hearty dishes popped up that Snips was happy to point out. Is it too late to quit being a wizard and be a house elf instead? Ron asked during one of these meals. You'd have to clean the house, though, Harry pointed out. Never mind then. Also on the Hogwarts end, Hermione was back to her fanatical levels of studying, even without the 2 extra classes of Muggle studies and divination. Even the first years were quickly learning that you did not mess with Hermione when she was busy studying. She had developed in 3rd year the nasty habit of snapping at anyone who in any way interrupted her studies, ranging from actually talking to her, horsing around in the common room, or on one memorable occasion, breathing too loud. Even Snips didn't bother her during her studying bouts anymore. Mistakes had been made. They did, at least, make sure to inform her when it was dinner time, specifically when they were already on their way out the door and able to bolt. She did seem intrigued by the news of Newt Scamander, though, happily regaling them with how he had written fantastic beasts and where to find them, and had apparently dealt with something called an obscurial in New York sometime before World War Roman II. So if anyone can figure Snips out, it'd be him. But even Dumbledore is having trouble figuring out what Snips is, Ron said, looking at the little bat creature as he flapped over to the steak and kidney pie, looking at Harry and pointing at it. Harry dipped him a little cup and set it in front of him so he could dig in. I think we're seriously looking at him being an unclassified species or something. Hey, we could be the ones to classify him, Harry suggested. Write down everything we know about him, make a report. I bet Hagrid would accept it as extra credit, get us out of dealing with the Scroots. Well, Ron and Hermione both liked that idea. Hermione tacked on looking up how to classify new fantastic beasts to her to-do list as she scampered back to the library after eating. She didn't even stay for dessert, Ron pointed out. You ever think that maybe we should stop her? Harry asked. You stop her. The last time I tried, I almost ended up in the hospital wing. Harry agreed that would be hazardous to his health. What Hermione was up to became clear one evening when she brought in a stack of leaflets and a tin full of badges that read SPEW, or rather, SPEW, standing for the Society for the Promotion of Elvish Welfare. Question: why? Ron asked when she finished. Because this is important, and no one is talking about it, Hermione said fervently. I've been doing my research, and elf enslavement goes back centuries. This needs to be addressed. I mean, I can understand it for elves like Winky, Harry said, wincing at the thought of the now houseless elf. But Creature seems fine now, and the Hogwarts elves are fine with their jobs. Because they don't know any better, Hermione insisted. And Creature wasn't fine with it until after you talked Sirius into bribing him. Harry went over that particular memory again, trying to figure out where, exactly, that had happened, resolved to ask Dumbledore if he could use his pensive for that later. Unsurprisingly, this didn't gain much traction among the other students. Mostly people signed up to shut Hermione up, although several Muggle-borns and half-bloods, who had undoubtedly taken history classes in primary school, signed up as well. Luna, of course, interviewed Hermione about it, causing Hermione to be torn between her disdain for the Quibbler and her desire to tell people about the issue. Harry, in particular, was looking forward to the next printing. Malfoy unironically signing up was a surprise, though. Just so long as I don't have to wear the stupid badge, Malfoy said, and I'll give you an extra galleon to change the bloody name. Well, I wanted to name it Stop the Outrageous Abuse of Our Fellow Magical Creatures and campaign for a change in their legal status, but it wouldn't fit on the badges, Hermione said. Society for the Promotion of Magical Beings, Malfoy suggested flatly. Hermione considered this. We'll vote on it next meeting. I can't wait, Malfoy said, in a tone much drier than the current weather. At least it wasn't blustery the day Durmstrang and Beauxbatons were set to arrive. Harry added Pegasus to the list of mythological creatures that turned out to be real, although the Durmstrang ship coming up out of the Black Lake was impressive and made him wonder if wizard pirates were a real thing. And then, once they were safely inside and enjoying the special feast, Dumbledore announced who, or rather, what would be doing the choosing of the champions, the Goblet of Fire. Well, that shouldn't be too bad, Fred said. Should be easier to outsmart a cup than a wizard. Considering he and George both ended up with long white beards after their attempt, Harry doubted it. It'd be cool if we could participate, though, Ron said, eyeing the goblet after Fred and George were sent to the infirmary by Dumbledore. Maybe, Harry said, watching a few Hufflepuffs walked up to the goblet of fire to put a few pieces of parchment in. Too young to participate, and honestly not too miffed about that, he decided. For once, it would be nice to see a year at Hogwarts where he wasn't in mortal jeopardy. Might still drop in on Madame Pomfrey and say hi, though. Didn't want her to think he had forgotten her. Chapter 50, in which Elvish interviews happen. Chapter text, everyone still stayed focused on the Goblet of Fire and the Trousered Tournament as October wore on. Angelina Johnson from Gryffindor entered, which gave everyone wearing red and gold someone to cheer for. Cedric Diggory from Hufflepuff just entered too, Hermione said. Did it right before you two came in. Harry tried to recall what he knew of Cedric Diggory beyond him being the Hufflepuff seeker, and apparently having a last name that sounded like a sneeze. Who else is entering? Cassius Warrington from Slytherin, Dean said. You know, the one on the Quidditch team that looks like a great big sloth. I hope he's better at spells than Quidditch, Harry said. Well, theoretically, the goblet wouldn't spit out a total incompetent, Dean said. So there's some hope. Theoretically, Ron muttered. Hermione, meanwhile, was still stuck on her house elf liberation policy, much to everyone's aggravation. Hermione, I'm not helping you knit hats so you can trick them into losing their jobs, Harry said firmly. Although it'd be the perfect double-blind, Ron observed, holding one up. I mean, you can't even tell their hats. Which one of you knitted this one? That one's mine, Hermione said. Good news, Harry, you're improving. At the very least, to avoid Hermione possibly coercing the house elves into poisoning the Gryffindor table, Harry agreed to sneak down to the kitchens and talk to them about possible liberation policies. Luna agreed to help on the stipulation that it double as an interview for the Quibbler. This is a very nice cloak, Harry, she said on the way there. Yeah, Harry said, glancing at the faint shimmer of the invisibility cloak and trying to recall how many times he had actually used it. Adding to his tally was probably worth writing to Sirius and Remus about, even if he still hadn't used it for pranks or other misbehaving. 1 year out of 4, technically, although Dumbledore hadn't punished him for sneaking out to see the Mirror of Erist. It's great if I ever have to get somewhere without being seen. Used it a lot 2nd year. I heard that was a shame how people acted, Luna said. Of course it wasn't all their fault. Luna explaining about pandemites, which infested your hair like lice and ate all sensibilities, according to her, carried them almost to the Hufflepuff common room. Harry slowed, looking at the paintings before stopping in front of one that depicted a bowl of fruit. So according to Fred and George, if we tickle the pear it'll let us down into the kitchens, Harry said. Luna nodded. That's very clever. Not many people would think to do that. The painting swung inward once the pair wound down, revealing a path down that Harry and Luna followed, Harry bundling up the cloak and tucking it under an arm as they stepped out into a well-lit and downright cozy kitchen that was bustling with elves. Is it true that muggles think that elves make cookies? Luna asked him. Oh, kind of. Harry noised, trying to think of how to explain company mascots and commercials when he could hardly explain how a TV worked, was saved from this by the nearest house elf taking note of them. Mr. Harry Potter, sir, the house elf squeaked. Harry blinked, recognizing this one. Mipsy, hi. It's good to see you outside the hospital wing, sir, Mipsy said. How can we help you? We were hoping to conduct an interview, Luna said, and perhaps ask a few questions. Certainly, just let us know how we can be of service. Luna nodded, looked at Fitzherbert before looking back at the house elves as they increasingly found themselves the center of attention. Are you feeling at all oppressed? Is this about that student organization thing? One house elf, that looked busy stirring gravy, asked. Kind of, Harry admitted. See, I think part of the issue is we don't know enough about wizard-elf relations. Mipsy, you were a big help in 2nd year. You think you could talk to Hermione? Yes, Mipsy said. But please tell her to stop leaving clothes around the common room. It doesn't actually do anything but upset the cleaning crew. Harry had actually already tried telling her that. Maybe you can explain it to her when you talk to her. What does happen to a house elf that doesn't have a house? Luna asked. And are you castle elves instead, since you work at Hogwarts? A lot of elves looked pensive at the second question. We're still house elves, one reasoned finally. Because Hogwarts has 4 schoolhouses, doesn't it? As for the first, ma'am, just look at poor Winky over there. another elf said, pointing in front of the fireplace. Been weeks since she was hired and still inconsolable. Harry remembered Winky as Crouch's house elf, went over to see, found her passed out next to the fireplace, clutching a butterbeer, which another house elf removed before putting a pillow under her head. Harry blinked, recognizing the second house elf. Creature, wait, what are you doing here? Creature has been informed by Master Sirius that Creature is on vacation until the house is built, Creature told him. Creature occasionally comes here to polish silver and iron clothes. I don't think you're actually supposed to work while you're on vacation. Wait, is this why my socks keep getting folded? Master Harry should probably be keeping better track of his socks, Creature said. And Master Sirius said that a vacation should be spent doing something calming and pleasing. Ironing is both for Creature. That makes sense, Luna said brightly. Mr. Creature, could you please tell us your opinions on house elf liberation? Creature looked a bit flustered at being addressed as Mr., but that didn't stop him from taking a slow, pointed look at Winky, who looked like she had passed out crying. Creature feels that liberating house elves for the purpose of only freeing them is irresponsible, ma'am, he said finally. Creature does not deny that some house elves are in terrible situations, but we consider our roles noble and important. It would be like expelling you from the school, sir and ma'am, Mipsy said. How would you feel if you were happily sitting in class only for someone to throw you out and say you were never welcome back? Harry felt that was a good point and said so. It is understandable that young wizards must learn these things for themselves, Creature said. Mipsy nodded. This happens sometimes. Usually we take the concern in the spirit it's given in and move on. But please ask your friend to stop leaving her knitting everywhere, one elf said. At first we thought she was just being forgetful, but it's all over the place. She can't actually get us freed like that anyway, another elf said. It's the headmaster who would dismiss us if it ever came to that. Well, that's why we're here, Harry said. We didn't know. And now you do, another elf said, holding up a tray. Tea. Harry and Luna thanked them and complimented them on the tea, causing a few to blush. Master Harry and his friends are very polite, Creature said, beaming and resulting in Harry being flustered as well. The rest of the interview went well, and when Harry and Luna got ready to head for their respective dorms, it was with them being laden down with plenty of snacks as well. Can we help you with anything else? One elf asked. Can you tell us if there's really a secret society of magical familiars hidden in the walls? Harry asked. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of such a society at this time. Which, Harry figured, was just the sort of answer that someone trying to hide a secret society would give. There was also the matter of the Hogwarts All-Stars. Harry, after the Triwizard Tournament was announced and Quidditch was cancelled, had a plan to occupy their Saturdays that didn't have Hogsmeade trips scheduled, was pleased when the next Saturday was nice and sunny, and the Quidditch pitch had an assortment of people with brooms. So what's this then? One of the Ravenclaw chasers asked. So, I figured with no Quidditch this year, which is a shame, Harry offered, that we could do like pick-up games or something. Not for house points or a cup, just to goof around, and so we don't forget how to play. So if you want to pass and ruin your groove, that's fine, Katie Bell offered. No one objected to that explanation. Matter of fact, that explanation saw the full teams showing up the following Saturday. That first Saturday, however, was just spent goofing off, putting their names into a hat and groaning, depending on who ended up on whose team. Harry and Malfoy had both ended up on the same team on one game, spent most of it sniping at each other and losing the quaffle. But yes, part of the benefits of this horsing around was that they could all try new positions if they chose. Harry tried out being keeper during one round, had taken all of his self-control not to go darting for the snitch when he saw it. Being a beater was fun too, even though he flinched when the bludger came for him, still recalling second year. Careful, Harry, Fred said, coming up on his side. They can smell fear. There were people in the stands too, cheering them on or chatting, and slowly some of the players drifted over and rested there as the die-hard players kept on with tighter and tighter teams, trying different tricks and goofs to shake things up at first, but eventually narrowing down to a serious Quidditch match. Dean called the end result the Hogwarts All-Stars. The next Saturday saw all four full teams show up, which led to a four-way Quidditch game with conjured hoops, all sets color-coded so they could keep them straight, courtesy of Hermione. Luna, Lee Jordan, and Fitzherbert were keeping score, and surprisingly, Buckbeak was sitting in the stands next to Sirius in dog form, Snips sitting on the hippogriff's head. It was random enough that a lot of people missed a few plays from looking. Four-way Quidditch was predictably chaos, but fun chaos, and when the diehards were all that was left, it did turn into a two-way game, Dean taking note of who stayed on for his all-star lineup. Next time saw them all cooking up random rules to go with the games. One that ended in disaster was riding on the broomstick backwards. But it was still good fun, leaving Harry to think he'd be able to summon a Patronus on these memories. The rival schools arriving had provided distraction, yes, but after a few weekends, they also attracted their own share of fresh players, most notably Victor Crumb, which led to a lot of squabbling about who would get him on their team before the hat was brought out, and every team was formed by random draw. Harry and Malfoy's team agreed to just discount them since they'd be too busy arguing, which they couldn't bring themselves to argue about. It also led to them agreeing to work together just to startle everyone. By this time, Dean had made banners for all four teams, for the random rosters, and for the All-Stars. There had been enough players in the latter to qualify for two teams, which were now titled the Grims and the Griffs after Snuffles and Buckbeak. It didn't take very long after that for uniforms to be made. Everyone got two pair to account for randomizing, and for unofficially official matches complete with audience to start taking place. Snuffles and Buckbeak would canter around the pitch first to hype the crowd up, which Harry suspected was Sirius' idea. It was still Quidditch without the tension and weight of points and cups, though, and as such, Harry quite enjoyed it. Snips, meanwhile, was enjoying a relatively quiet year. At least until the other shoe dropped. It was inevitable, he was sure. These children couldn't stay out of trouble if you paid them. If they weren't merrily hunting it down, trouble was seeking them out with the intent of waylaying them and leaving them crumpled by the wayside. Snips was 100% certain that he had grey feathers because of them. So with this goblet of fire business and the whole Triwizard tournament, Snips was entirely certain that Harry would find himself involved somehow. His name coming out of the goblet of fire cemented this belief. Now Snips knew better. Snips had stayed on him and expressed his disdain for Harry, and Ron discussing entering that they knew not to try it. Harry had shown no interest in participating and seemed perfectly happy that the limelight would be on someone else for once. Snips fully believed Harry when he said he didn't put his name in the goblet of fire. Dumbledore, who Snips highly suspected could also read minds, agreed on this point, which made a grand total of 2 people and 1 potions expert in the room that thought so. "This is an outrage," Madame Maxim stormed. "Hogwarts getting 2 champions. I demand a redraw," Karkaroff insisted. "If Hogwarts gets 2 champions, then we get 2 champions as well." "You cannot redraw," Crouch protested. "The goblet has extinguished itself and will not relight until the next tournament. The decision is final." "Excuse me," Dumbledore said, using the same voice he had when stilling the Great Hall during Harry's first year. "Thank you," he said when attention was back on him. "While I am sure we're all very concerned that an underaged wizard is now seeing his life in mortal peril." Harry groaned a little at that. We seem to be glossing over the main concerns. Firstly, that Harry's name was entered, and secondly, that the goblet spat it back out. Seeing as how I put the age line around the goblet myself, and it has kept out more cunning students than Harry here, I feel this falls under both a general security concern as well as a tournament integrity concern. Barty, Ludo, Cornelius, if you don't mind me handing the ball to you." "I do mind," Fudge said. "You can't possibly be pinning this on the Ministry." "Our security is flawless," Crouch protested. "Obviously not, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation," Moody said. "My guess is someone older confounded the goblet and entered Potter's name under a different school." "Question, why?" Harry asked, raising his hand. "To kill you," Moody said simply. "You're inexperienced, and this tournament has killed better wizards than you. It doesn't take much of a stretch of the imagination." Snips poked Harry's neck and pointed him to the nearest chair, considering his swaying was starting to become concerning, and he was starting to look a little green. "Yes, that is a problem," Dumbledore agreed, "which therefore requires a solution." "Mr. Potter's name came out of the goblet," Crouch said. "The only solution is him participating." "I was hoping for a different solution." "I was too," Harry said. Unfortunately, it's a binding magical contract, Bagman said. You can't just back out, it wouldn't end well. How bad? Harry asked. Dead silence for a beat. Bad, Bagman said. Very bad, Crouch agreed. Would make me look pretty, Moody said. It's not necessarily something we'd want to risk if we could help it, Dumbledore told him. Aye, but wait, a contract is between two people, right? Harry asked. I didn't put my name in, I don't agree to this, there isn't some magical loophole we could use. Getting cold feet, the Beauxbatons champion asked. I did not. Enter, Harry said. I can't say it any plainer. Harry, please calm yourself, Dumbledore said, putting a hand to his shoulder before looking at the ministry officials. Harry does have a point, however. A magical law goes back far enough that I'm sure some loophole exists that we can conveniently exploit. We require a guardian's signature to go to Hogsmeade, McGonagall pointed out. Would it not stand to reason that, since we required participants to be of age, Harry would therefore need his legal guardian's approval for this? Snips could tell that Harry's first thought went straight to the Dursleys, thinking about how they'd happily sign off on him possibly dying, before remembering the fact that he was staying with the dog now. Sirius would definitely not sign off on this. It's worth a try, McGonagall insisted, glaring at Crouch. One green fire later saw Sirius and Remus joining the room that was starting to get rather crowded, and within a few minutes they were apprised of the situation and looking at Harry. I didn't enter, Harry said, and I didn't ask someone else to enter me either. Good, Sirius said, nodding. I was busy being torn between finally you're misbehaving, and why did you pick this of all things? Back to being responsible adults, Remus scolded Sirius. We don't give permission for Harry to compete. No, we don't. Thank you, Harry gusted. Is that sufficient? Dumbledore asked the ministry trio. Bagman and Fudge both looked at Crouch. I will have to check through the documentation to be sure, Crouch said finally. In the meantime, it is most likely better to err on the side of caution. Until we can confirm, Mr. Potter must conduct himself as though he is indeed the fourth contestant. Are we absolutely sure breaking a magical binding contract is bad? Harry asked. We're sure, Dumbledore said, but the first few activities involved generally are not life-threatening. We have a couple of weeks before the first task. We should have a concrete answer by then. We should, Sirius said, glaring at Crouch. Seemed to finally notice Karkaroff. Oh, hey, Igor, you've looked worse. Snips tipped his head, interested in figuring out why that made Karkaroff turn that particular purple color, but Crouch chose to inform the contestants of what was expected of them from the first task, and Dumbledore dismissed them. The foreign champions and their headmasters left in a huff shortly after. Don't worry, Harry, we'll get to the bottom of this, Remus told Harry, putting a hand to his shoulder. In the meantime, Dumbledore is right, you need your rest. Actually, to be fair to both of you, Dumbledore said, nodding to the two Hogwarts champions. Your respective houses probably have parties awaiting you, and it's probably not wise to keep them waiting too much longer. Oh goodness, why did we end up with a Gryffindor champion? McGonagall muttered, burying her face in her hands. I swear this wasn't my fault, Harry said. I was looking forward to a quiet year for once. I feel like we should talk about your low pranking drive, but that also feels like something we shouldn't discuss in front of various professors, Sirius said. In the meantime, we can get some rooms in Hogsmeade. Seeing as how you've got trouble dogging you, we might as well stay close and dog it instead. And run your puns by different people, Remus said. That too. This didn't seem like it cheered Harry up very much, considering his gloomy air as he and the other champion left to go to their respective dorms. So, said Champion Noised once they were alone, how did you do it? The same way I opened the chamber in second year, Harry said, probably sharper than he intended. I didn't enter. Then they're right. You either have the worst luck or someone wants you dead. Yeah, Harry said, heading for Gryffindor Tower. That's a problem. Snips huffed, debating on whether or not directing him elsewhere was the better option, decided against it. Right now, the fact that someone was making overt attempts on his life meant it was probably better for his health to be in his dorm, no matter how horrendously loud it was going to be. Which reminded him. He had procured a couple of balls of lint to stuff in his ears. He really had to start hunting for these after Creature started doing laundry. By the time they had reached the tower, but that did very little to blunt the wave of cheers that very nearly flattened Harry. Harry being dragged into the room and beset upon by all sides by people wanting to congratulate him and very bluntly not listening to him say that he didn't put his name in. It took forever for Harry to get up to his room, and only the desire to not totally abandon Harry in his time of need kept Snips clinging to his neck through this whole thing. Granted, apparently Ron didn't share this feeling, if his ridiculous behavior was any indication. By the time Snips was able to stop shaking, Harry and Ron had had a whole row that ended with Ron yanking his curtains shut and Harry flapping his hands in irritation before turning his attention to Snips. "You believe I didn't put my name in the goblet of fire, right?" he asked. Snips nipped him for being so dunderheaded. Did he or did he not stick with him every hour of every day? Snips was fairly certain he would have remembered Harry doing something so monumentally stupid. Speaking of things monumentally stupid, Snips flew over to Ron's bed, squirmed between the curtains, and lit into him, nipping every part of his head he could reach. "Ow, ow, hey, stop it." Ron yelped, trying to bat Snips away. "Hey, Snips, stop," Harry yelled, hearing Ron's distress and running to his aid despite the argument. Snips stopped, sat on Ron's chest, and growled at him, beady eyes narrowed, staring into his eyes and all that fuming jealousy and hurt, and trying to impart "Use your brain, you stupid idiot, or I will never assist you in potions again." Ron glared at him, looked as though he would dearly love to hit him, Harry standing there and poised to snatch him off, even though deep in his heart Snips knew Harry would refuse to believe that of his friend. And then Ron sagged, letting such a gust of air out of his mouth that Snips sank a few inches. "Bloody idiot," he muttered. "Snips threw a fit when we just talked about sneaking our names in. He wouldn't even be in our dorm if you really did." "So we're in agreement," Harry said flatly. "I didn't put my name in the goblet of fire." "You didn't put your name in the goblet of fire. You got Snips to do it." "Ow, ow," being the usual reaction to Snips biting down hard on your nose. "All right, I give." Ron yelped, trying to get Snips to let go. Snips finally did. "Ow," Ron moaned, rubbing his nose and letting go of Snips. "I'm sorry I got so. Well, I can't say snippy, ow." "Snips, stop," Harry said, scooping him up. "I'd probably be shocked all to bits too if you or Hermione's name came out of the goblet." "Hermione's bout as likely to do that as Snips is," Ron said, sitting up. "I'm sorry I was acting like such a prat. Can you forgive me?" "Yeah," Harry said, nodding. "We're friends, right?" "Right." Snips gave a satisfied sigh and wondered how much longer he'd have to deal with teenage idiocy. Chapter 51, in which quills are questioned. Chapter text: Everyone had an opinion on Harry being in the tournament the next day, enough so that Harry decided to preemptively pack his invisibility cloak in his bag, although he did humor Hermione on trying to bluster through it. "I'll head for the library and see if I can't find anything," Hermione said, speeding through breakfast and running off. "Congratulations," Ron told Harry. "You got her off of Spew." "I thought we were calling it SBMB, Harry said. "I know, I voted for it." "I did too, but I'm still getting a kick out of teasing her for her first choice," which Harry had to admit was fair. "Hello, Harry." "Hello, Luna and Fitzherbert and Colin," Harry said, noting the quill and excited third year. "You know I didn't put my name in the goblet of fire, right?" "Yes, but I was wondering if you'd be open for an interview," Luna said. "The special edition of the Quibbler is going to be focusing on possible ways and reasons for your name to get in there, and we wanted to open with your perspective, if that's all right." "I mean, I guess. But you know, as much as I do, I found out someone had done that to me when Dumbledore read my name. And what's your opinion on it?" "Honestly, I was hoping for a nice quiet year for once." "Yes, Hogwarts is a lot more exciting than I was led to believe." "You mean it isn't supposed to always be like this?" Colin asked, nonplussed. "Usually," Fred said, sitting down. "But we do our part to keep the chaos high," George agreed, sitting down next to him. "Hello, Fred, George," Luna greeted. "I haven't seen Edmund around Ravenclaw lately." "Ah, my dear Luna, the Weasley quintuplet, with help from certain business associates," Fred put in, "are working on the next big thing to please our loyal fanbase. I'm sure he'll be showing up with something interesting. We'll be calling it Weasley Wizard Wheezes. It'll be a blast." "Literally," they both said, grinning. Fitzherbert tapped Luna on the shoulder, pointing at the notepad. "Good point. Is it okay if we advertise that?" she asked. "The more the merrier," Fred said, nodding. "We're still nailing down the location, but we should be ready to start mail orders come the holidays," George announced. Harry decided that he should expect havoc then. Harry was very hopeful when Dumbledore called him to his office a few days later. "You figured out how to get me out of the tournament," he blurted as soon as he stepped through the door. "Unfortunately, no," Dumbledore said. "The explanation I have been given thus far is that wizarding law in Britain bears far too much resemblance to Muggle law in Britain. Perhaps the Americans were onto something when they decided to start off with a written constitution. But then again, they only have a couple hundred years to sort through. In the meantime, Harry, the reason I called you here, may I introduce you to Newt Scamander?" Harry blinked, registering the older man currently examining Fawkes and complimenting his plumage. Said man looked over, smiled brightly as he came over and shook Harry's hand. "Dumbledore tells me you've got a fantastic new beast for me to look at," Newt asked, looking him over like Harry had it in his pocket, which wasn't too far from the truth, except that Snips preferred the hood of Harry's robe. "Already got a good look at those blast-ended scroots of Hagridess. Those are definitely a 5. 5. Harry echoed. "Oh, in my book, I use a rating system to let people know if a certain creature is dangerous. Had to have a couple of other people weigh in on that. Apparently I tend to be too lenient. But really, a lot of times, it's just a lack of understanding on the person's part. You can't fault a creature for behaving true to its nature." Harry had the distinct opinion that Newt and Hagrid had gotten along swimmingly during the Scroot meeting. "Mr. Scamander here is the leading expert on fantastic beasts and where to find them," Dumbledore told Harry. "If anyone can give us any clues on your little friend's origins, it would be him." Harry nodded, proceeded to have the usual fun time of getting Snips to present himself when he didn't want to be presented. His fingers had a few fresh nips by the time he was able to show him to Newt. "Is this normal behavior?" Newt asked, with the air of wanting to confirm things. "Usually," Harry said, "Snips doesn't like being shown off." "My apologies, Mr. Snips, is he shy?" Harry debated on that, looking at Snips looking at him with an expression that said just try it. More opinionated. "Ah, strong-willed," Newt said, crouching a bit to get a better look at Snips. "Favorite food, general behavior. Well, yes, I know," he said to Snips conversationally when Snips started growling at him. "But it's often difficult to have a conversation when the two parties don't speak the same language. You might try a quick quotes quill," Harry offered. "My friend Luna has one, and it understands Snips well enough." "Really?" Newt asked, looking like Harry had directed him to a stash of presents. "Is this true?" Dumbledore asked his quill when it bobbed up and down. "I'm going to need you and Fawkes to document the school gossip then. In the meantime, might we borrow your quill?" 5 minutes later, and Snips seemed resigned to chattering at Quincy in between nibbling on biscuits and sipping his tea, eventually allowing himself to be picked up and examined by Newt, who seemed happy to just let him crawl across his hands and dangle from his wrists. "May I see your teeth, please?" Newt asked, peered at Snip's needle-like teeth. Now the tail and general shape makes me want to say swooping evil, but the coloration and head shape is all wrong. Feathers are interesting." "You said he's got a nose for potions." "Well, Harry noised, glancing at Dumbledore. "Snips has been, well, helping me with potions since first year. Actually, pretty sure that's where he ended up in my robes." Dumbledore seemed interested in this news, but continued to listen as Newt picked apart the information he had been given. "Understands writing and human communication, might actually be closer to a being than a beast," Newt said, letting Snips crawl onto his hand. "And there's still the question of species rarity. I'll have to ask around. No one seems to have ever heard of something like him," Harry admitted. "Fascinating. We'll have to see about fixing that," he said, handing Snips back to Harry. "In the meantime, can you do me a favor and keep documenting what you learn about him? Once we figure out his particular species, we can add him to my book, but that'll need a few longitudinal studies as well." Sure," Harry said. "I can, send you an owl later," Newt nodded. "Either that or come find me. I'll be hanging around a bit for consultation for the tournament. You're sure they don't want a cockatrice?" "I have one in my suitcase," he said to Dumbledore. "It might be in poor taste," Dumbledore said. "But Hagrid agreed to you doing a few guest lectures for his Newt students. I agreed that would be the appropriate level, since the names match." Newt snorted at that. Dumbledore nodded and turned his attention to Harry. "By the way, Harry, towards the end of the week will be the weighing of the wands, as we discussed. avoiding accidentally breaking tournament rules until after we're certain we can is the safest option, and this is still a reasonably safe activity. We'll know for certain before the first task if you're actually participating. Here's hoping, Harry said. Harry had wondered at Dumbledore referring to the weighing of the wands as a reasonably safe activity, got that question answered when he turned up and was waylaid by a reporter. "So this is the famous Harry Potter," she said. "Rita Skeeter, Daily Prophet, can I trouble you for a quick interview? Not here, of course, somewhere a bit more private." Harry barely had time to register what she had said before finding himself bundled off. "This'll do nicely, don't you think?" she asked, pushing him to his seat before sitting down across from him and opening her purse. Harry had to take a moment to register where they were. "We're in a closet. Don't let that bother you. Are you familiar with a quick quotes quill, Harry?" "Yeah, my friend has one," Harry said, blinking at it. "Does it have a name?" "Don't look at the quill, Harry, look at me," Rita said, waving a hand at him. "Now, what drove you to enter the tournament?" "I didn't enter. Someone put my name in the cup." "Of course they did. How else would you beat such a powerful bit of magic?" "I didn't. My friend's quill has a name." "Remember what I said about not looking at the quill," Rita said, not looking over as the quill perked up to look at him. "What about your parents, Harry? Do you think they'd be proud or concerned about such obviously self-destructive behavior? Probably evenly split, from what I've heard. Don't the quills usually have questions too?" "Remember what I said about not focusing on the quill," Rita said, starting to sound irritated, looked it too when the quill forced the notepad over and started tapping insistently at it. "No, and your descriptions are too glowing. Dial it back." Harry had to curl his lips in to keep from smiling. "What about your opponents?" Rita asked, smoothing getting back on track. "Doesn't it bother you that you'll be facing students vastly more learned than you?" "Everything about this bothers me, considering I didn't enter," Harry said. "What was the quill's question?" Rita's lips pursed. The door opened then, and Snips came lighting in, chattering angrily at Rita as the quill quickly scribbled away and Dumbledore stuck his head in. "Ah," he noised, looking around. "Lovely place to collect one's thoughts, but usually when I do so it's by myself. This really isn't one of the two-person broom cupboards. Moving on, Harry, I hate to bother you, but the weighing of the wands is about to start." "Right," Harry said, grabbing Snips and getting up. "I guess it was nice meeting you," he said, mostly to the quill. "Same," Rita said, shooting a glare at her quill. "I definitely look forward to seeing more of you." Boy, Harry hoped not. A few days later saw Harry and Hermione with no Ron scanning the Great Hall. "Has Ron ever gotten up early before?" Hermione asked. "Not that I recall," Harry admitted. "But he definitely was in our dorm room last night." "I don't like this," Hermione said as they sat down. "Where could he be? He couldn't have been kidnapped, could he?" "Dunno, might be Fred and George's idea of a prank," Harry said, glancing down the table, and then looking around when he realized he didn't see any of the Weasleys. "Where is everybody?" "Oh dear, this is worse," Hermione said, wringing her hands. Harry was inclined to agree, looked sharply when Snips started hopping up and down and pointing to see Ron suddenly run into the Great Hall. "I asked Harry if you slept in," Hermione said, relief and irritation warring for dominance as Ron crashed into the seat next to them and fought to catch a breath. "Except he says you were gone before he got up. What have you been doing, Ronald? And where are your siblings?" Ron finally inhaled enough air to be coherent. "My brother, Charlie." "Yeah." Harry asked, wondering why Ron started with that particular sibling. "Charlie's here." "Yeah," for the first task. "Yeah," Ron gave Harry an and, "Look, and what does Charlie study?" Harry started to feel the blood drain out of his face. "Dragons." "Right, Harry, they've got bloody dragons as the first task." Chapter 52, in which dragons are tasked. Chapter text. Something else that Harry had been doing in his spare time was practicing more in the potions labs, which Snips heartily approved of. Harry had the distinct feeling Snips had viewed the Triwizard Tournament as an irritating interruption at best. Harry's main goal with potions this year had been to learn how to brew wolfsbane, which had both amused and intrigued Slughorn when he asked. "You know that's Newt level, correct?" Slughorn asked. "Be very difficult to do, although I don't doubt you could manage it if you practiced. Any reason you have this particular potion as a goal?" "Remus Lupin," Harry said. "I guess he's kind of an honorary uncle, but well, you made it for him last year." "Yes," Slughorn sighed. "Terrible thing to happen to anyone, really." The potion might help, but most werewolves can't afford it. Most of the ingredients are terribly expensive, and the potion itself is desperately tricky to get right. Could poison the person if it turns out wrong. The money part isn't going to be a problem, Harry said. Me and Sirius have more than enough gold to foot the bill, and I understand that right now Sirius is paying someone to make it. Me, actually, Slughorn told him. Mr. Black has been most gracious in covering the expenses. Oh, Harry blinked. Professor, I don't. Don't worry, dear boy. I understand entirely where you're coming from. And besides, knowing how to brew this would be a nice feather in your cap, and maybe give me a few months off. Let's get started, shall we? Slughorn was right. The potion was desperately tricky, even with Snips helping. Slughorn was, of course, fascinated with the little creature when he found out. So this is how you've been doing so well in my classes. And here I thought it was just you inheriting Lily's talents, Slughorn said, watching Snips sort through ingredients and chatter indignantly at Harry for slicing up one of the ingredients instead of dicing. Sorry, Professor, Harry said. I really do like potions, but Snips has been loads of help. You're not mad, are you? Mad? I'd rather like one myself, Slughorn said. The quality of potions' ingredients affects the potion, you know. I did read that. Which had led to Slughorn borrowing Snips a couple of times to check his store cupboard, although Snips refused to help in general classes. Apparently, there were limits. But with the first task looming near, Harry had a hard time focusing on anything else, including potions. Harry, my boy, maybe we should skip this particular lab, Slughorn told him, putting a hand to his shoulder. You can't be preoccupied while working with potions. That just leads to accidents. Sorry, Harry said. It's just this stupid tournament, he burst out. No one seems to have any idea how to get me out of it. I'm sure Dumbledore would have told me something by now, and then Ron told me earlier that the first task is bloody dragons. How am I supposed to deal with that? I didn't enter, I didn't want to participate, and now I'm going to get eaten because I'm not allowed to leave a contract that someone else entered me in. I'm stuck. Now, Harry, Slughorn said, handing him a handkerchief. Maybe we leave off on potions for the rest of the day. Doesn't do to mess with them while you're emotional. I will tell you I contacted some of my old students at the ministry, and people are looking. Why, I'm sure they'll have this squared away before the first task even starts. Harry wavered. Are you sure? Most positive. Even if he did get out of it, Harry distinctly felt the need to at least inform the last champion of the first task. Ron had said that the other two headmasters had been there looking at the dragons, so he didn't doubt that Fleur and Crumb knew about it. Now to just tell the last one. Ross, Harry barked, running up to the Slytherin. Hey, what is that? So no offense, but Malfoy's been handing these out, and I do kind of agree with it, Ross said, indicating the support the true Hogwarts champion, pin he was wearing. I do too, Harry said. Can I have one? Does he need more pins? I can nick some from Hermione and tell her I'm handing out spew pins. I thought she changed the name, and how do you think Malfoy got these pins? Okay, fair, Harry said, but while we're on the topic, Cassius Warrington. I'm not sabotaging him if that's what you're after. No, I'm not. I need you to tell him that the first task is dragons. Is what? Ron found out this morning. His brother is one of the guys who brought them in, and Cassius is the only one who doesn't know at this point. Seriously? Ross asked. Harry nodded, grim-faced. Or, I believe you about the goblet, right? Glad someone does, Harry said. You'll tell Warrington, right? I'm on it, and Harry, for what it's worth, good luck. Harry was definitely going to need it, especially considering things didn't get sorted before the first task. How it went, however, was interesting. Mostly because the eggs the dragons had been brought with hatched early, much to everyone's frustrations. Harry, meantime, was frustrated that this didn't cancel the first task, or reschedule it, or put something else in its stead. Instead, they were greeted with the news that there had actually been 5 dragons brought from Romania. Now, I don't think it needs to be said, but just to be on the safe side, you will be retrieving your egg without doing harm to the dragon, Dumbledore announced. She is, after all, still a baby. A baby Norwegian Ridgeback, Warrington muttered. It was a sentiment Harry could echo, considering his recollections of helping Hagrid with Nora when she was still here at Hogwarts. Dumbledore nodded. Also, seeing as how we're down to 1 dragon, the 4 of you will be attempting this at the same time. You can either charge in or employ teamwork to retrieve the eggs from the dragon. I highly encourage the latter. That was a fair enough assessment, especially when it became obvious that Nora had grown a lot since Harry had seen her last, small compared to how the other dragons were described, but still big enough that she'd probably be able to bowl Hagrid over with ease. Said gamekeeper seemed very torn on who to cheer for, eventually settling for alternating between "Go Nora, that's Mummy's baby," and "Go Harry." Nora kept glancing up at him, but still had plenty of attention for the four champions fanning out, had them all cowering behind the same rock in short order. "Smart, that one," Crumb observed. "Dumbledore's right. We can't do this on our own," Harry said. "Speak for yourself," Fleur snapped at him. "Currently he's speaking for champions in general," Warrington said. "But if you think you can take a dragon single-handedly, be my guest. It'd be good for a laugh." Fleur looked sour at that but said nothing. "So we need a plan to get those eggs. Anyone got any bright ideas? Harry?" "I don't know," Harry said, kind of chuffed that Warrington thought to include him in this discussion. "I don't suppose a Kia would work, would it?" "Of course not. It is too obvious," Fleur snapped. Harry decided to try anyway, which resulted in Nora catching the egg before it could go too far. "Worth a shot," Harry decided. "And how are we supposed to get the eggs without hurting the dragon?" Warrington demanded. Harry considered the dragon before him for a minute. Nora, the dragon Hagrid had hatched from an egg. "Anyone really good at transfiguration?" Harry asked. Crumb was, which was why Fleur had a teddy bear she was launching to the far end of the stadium using a repulsion charm. Nora spotted it, shrieked with glee, and abandoned the nest in favor of a new toy, leaving the champions to claim their eggs and hightail it back to the safe zone as soon as it was clear. She noticed, seemed torn between chasing after them and playing with her new toy. The toy won out, although she did shoot some fire after them for good measure. In other news, Harry would have really liked to skip the tournament altogether, which was old news at best but needed to be repeated. "Hello, Madame Pomfrey," Harry greeted, right before the Mediwitch bundled him to the nearest bed. "Dragons," she spat, looking like she was ready to spit flame herself. "And students fighting them, and you. Once, just once, I'd like to see less of you, Mr. Potter. You know, when the year first started and I thought I might have a quiet one for once, I was thinking I'd drop in just to say hi," Harry said, as she checked him over. "I would much rather have a visit such as that, Mr. Potter, honestly. You just attract trouble." "I noticed." Chapter 53, in which familiars investigate. Chapter text: various students had spent the evening and a chunk of the next day partying over the first task being over. Meanwhile, the Secret Order of Familiars, as they were rebranded, were busy doing investigations of their own. "While I have my own opinions of Moody, why are we breaking into his office?" Snips asked as he picked the lock. "Because he made Neville cry," Trevor said. The toad was wearing a little fedora, inanely enough. "Moody made everyone cry in that class. We need a better reason. And also, since he's one of the new people in the school, and we've had wonky defense teachers before, it stands to reason that he needs to be checked out first," Marv said, having also impossibly produced a little press hat. "Are you sure you don't want a detective hat?" "I am absolutely positive," Snips said, finally getting the door unlocked and tugging it open. "And fine, I have my suspicions as well. I don't like defense teachers taking too high an interest in Harry. Granted, we can't make a case out of one teacher being a Death Eater, but it's a start," Trevor said, hopping in. "Look for something suspicious." "That doesn't narrow it down," Marv pointed out, coiling up in front of the mirror. "What's wrong with this mirror?" "That's a faux glass," Snips explained, landing on the edge of the desk nearest to it and peering in. "It's supposed to show your enemies, but only when they're right on top of you." "Doesn't sound very useful then," Marv opined. "Anything interesting up there?" "Yes, there's a note here with 'I'm evil' scrawled on it over and over again." "Really? No, don't be ridiculous." "Let's see," cracked Sneakoscope, which by Moody's own admission he had broken himself, because theoretically all the students set it off, which, knowing Fred and George, was likely. Root around the desk before finding himself drawn to the faux glass again. When he had been in here before, hiding in Harry's hood after Moody had caught him passing on information about the first task, some sallow-faced man had appeared in the glass, coinciding with his growing ire towards the teacher. Moody had lamented that the faux glass was probably going faulty as well, as that man was dead. Although Pettigrew had been dead, too, and see where that got them. So now here he was, trying to figure out if the faux glass was enchanted to only show Moody's enemies or the enemies of whoever looked into the mirror. Because if that was the case, Slughorn was complaining about a lack of lace wings and boomslang skin, both of which were key ingredients to. Well, this looks promising, Marv said, joining Trevor next to the rattling chest, looked up as Snips flew by. You look like you have an idea. Polyjuice potion, he explained, rooting through several cupboards before flying back out, landing on the edge of the desk nearest to the other familiars. No, let me think. If I were a paranoid faker, where would I hide everything? As one, they looked at the rattling chest, which had not one but 7 locks on it. That looks like it'd take a while to pick, Trevor observed. And there's no guarantee that each lock doesn't open a different compartment, Snips said. And I'm willing to bet that he keeps the keys on his person at all times. Oh, where's some useful magic user when you need one? Marv lamented. It'd be nice if we could just point at it and go open. Well, we can't use any of our owners. That sort of defeats the purpose of the order, Trevor pointed out. I doubt we could ask a house elf either, Snips said. I don't think one of the Hogwarts ones would agree to violating a teacher's privacy, nor do I think the black elf creature would. What is creature assisting with? All 3 of them screeched in alarm and jumped back at the house elf appearing behind them. What are you doing here? Snips demanded. Creature heard his name mentioned, Creature explained. I thought that only worked when wizards did it, Trevor said. Creature waffled a hand. Is technically Master Harry's familiar. Master Harry technically is a member of the House of Black, so theoretically assisting Master Harry's familiar is assisting the House of Black. The 3 familiars took a beat to untangle that logic. It checks out, Marv said finally, although now I'm wondering if you don't have anything better to do. Until Master Sirius finishes with building the house, there's very little for Creature to do, Creature admitted. Silver can only be polished so many times. So Creature has occasionally visited Hogwarts to iron Master Harry's socks and make soup, although recently Creature has also been trying to convince poor Winky to find new work, as she is a young elf with many years ahead of her. They tipped their heads at that. You're allowed to do all that? Trevor asked. I thought house elves were mostly tied to their houses, or something like that. As Creature said, currently there is no house, Creature said. Also, Master Sirius has informed me that I can consider this time as a vacation, where Creature can do as he pleases. This pleases Creature. Consider. Also, Creature has not been expressly forbidden from doing any of these things, so there's some wiggle room. I'd ask you to tell Hermione this, but you do better avoiding her current tier, Snips said. In the meantime, that chest there, can you unlock it? Theoretically, we have the full hour, but I'd rather we get this done quickly. Creature considered the chest. It may take Creature a few minutes. We can finish searching the rest of the room in the meantime, Marv said. Thank you, Creature. Trevor nodded, looked at Snips. You had a suspicion earlier about Polyjuice potion. 2 of the ingredients that Slughorn has been complaining about being missing from his stores are lace wings and boomslang skin, which incidentally are key ingredients to Polyjuice potion, Snips explained. Tip his head, considering. And while I'm not in the habit of giving the mutt more credit than he's worth, he did postulate that a dead Death Eater could still be alive. Barty Crouch, Jr., Creature supplied. Ah, the 3 familiars were immediately over as Creature opened the lid. How many larks did you do? Just the one for now, Creature said, watching as Snips sorted through the books before flying back out. Shall I do the next one? Preferably. The second lock showed clothes, which again wasn't helpful. Snips found more broken sneakerscopes, but nothing really incriminating. The third lock, however, was where things started to get interesting, potion supplies. Well, Marv asked as Snips sniffed at some of the vials. I'm right, he said. Polyjuice, keep going through the locks. 4th, 5th, and 6th were back to not really incriminating, but the 7th. Well, Trevor asked as Snips and Creature peered into the chest. Snips flicked his tail. Well, I think we found the real Mad-Eye Moody. Wait, what? Marv asked, leaning back in surprise. But if that's, who's been teaching the classes? Obviously someone with a vested interest in sneaking in. Creature, can you get him out? Creature can, Creature said, lowering himself into the trunk and sliding gently down to the inert form far below. Excuse me, sir, but we is needing for you to wake up now. Might be better to transport him unconscious. Moody has a record of having a short temper. All of them started at a distant bang. Snips looked over sharply at the faux glass. A shape within was starting to form. That was the class bell, Trevor said. We need to go, Snips said, flapping his wings in agitation, claws scraping on the side of the chest. Creature, just transport him to the Weasleys or something. We have to go now. Mistress Weasley will be most displeased, Creature muttered, before vanishing alongside Moody with a sharp crack. Snips hopped onto the lid, forced it shut again with a bang. We need another way out of here, he observed, taking note of the fact that the person in the faux glass was now identifiable as a person. There's a bolt hole over this way, Marv said, slithering for a corner. I found it last year when we were looking for Pettigrew. It was as good a place as any, flap after her, scamper under a cabinet as Trevor squeezed under, flicking his tongue out to grab his hat. Oh, bother. What? Snips asked sharply. Don't you say oh bother right now is not a good time for oh bother. It is a good time for oh bother, Marv said, pointing at where a board had been stuck to the wall, possibly with a permanent sticking charm. The fake Moody fixed it. Why would he fix it? Trevor asked. There's no reason to suspect. Pettigrew, probably, Marv answered, called up sharply at Snips shushing them. Professor Moody, aka the faker, was back in his office. You again, he growled at the faux glass. Dumbledore swears up and down that you're dead, and yet there's been at least one Death Eater that didn't stick to. Last one was an animagus, wasn't he? Might mean you're still here. Snips stiffened at the feeling of a detection spell sweeping over them, wilfed down to nothing as the cabinet vanished, exposing 3 familiars to one very angry wizard. Oh, bother, Marv whimpered. Chapter 54, in which Ron and Harry are put on a list. Chapter text, okay, you know what, there was nothing for it, they were dead anyway, bark Ron, before launching himself direct at the fake Moody. The brilliance of ridiculously stupid plans sometimes was that they were so stupid no one ever anticipated them. The fake Moody shot off a spell in alarm, but since Marv and Trevor had scattered, and Snips was already past the wand, it didn't hit anyone. Dive right for his face, sinking sharp teeth into the scarred nose, and hanging on for dear life, scratching and gnawing and doing his best to ignore the hits to him. The guy might not want to risk hexing at his face, but those slaps still hurt. Start looking for a place to bail, leaped at the wand when the guy finally decided to risk it, wrap his tail around it and yank. First curse hit the chandelier. Second one hit the window. Snips spun around before he could grab at him, sank his teeth into the man's hand, leaped away and flew for the rafters once he had the wand. You, the man growled, glanced at the faux glass before returning his attention to Snips. You coward, you traitor, how dare you? Snips really had no idea what he was talking about. Glance at the faux glass again, saw that sallow-faced guy had company, which was when Dumbledore, McGonagall, Mr. Weasley, Remus, and Sirius came in, all of them with wands drawn. Alastair, Dumbledore said calmly, I was hoping to discuss the nature of your employment, if you don't mind. So Sirius had had plenty of sharks today, starting with Creature popping into the Weasleys' house with Mad-Eye Moody, who had a whole yarn to spin about an impostor at Hogwarts, which had led to some quick apparating back to Hogsmeade and running to Hogwarts, sending a Patronus ahead to Dumbledore, who informed McGonagall, with all of them charging for the defense teacher's room. The guy had been bound pretty quickly, easy to do with no wand. Thank you, small, snippy familiar. And while they waited for the auras to get here, the polyjuice potion had worn off and left them all with a major bombshell. I told you Barty Jr. was still alive, Sirius crowed. Granted, that was a whole can of worms to deal with, especially when Barty Sr. showed up, looking faint. Sirius was debating on asking Creature for some popcorn while they watched the family drama when Remus tapped him on the shoulder. Padfoot, he muttered, staring at the mirror. I keep looking at that faux glass, and does the one guy seem familiar to you? Sirius looked. Yes, there was a lot of people in the mirror, all of them familiar, the ones that could be picked out in the room evident, and one guy who was nowhere to be seen in the room, despite everyone but Barty Jr. being accounted for in there. I mean, maybe, Sirius noised. But who is it? It's no one in here, that's for sure, unless there's another guy sipping polyjuice. Been debating about it, and I think that's Snape, Remus said. Seriously. Sirius took another look at the stranger in the mirror. No way, Severus was a lot younger and skinnier and had a bigger beak than that. Listen, the last time you saw him was over a decade ago. The last time I saw him, he looked a lot like that. I'm telling you that's Snape. I thought you said he was blown up, he's dead. So was Pettigrew. Both of them fell silent at that. Then where is he? Sirius asked. Like I said, everyone in the room is accounted for. We're going to need to produce the wand, Honora said, looked at Sirius's startled yelp. Sirius, meanwhile, looked at the source of that yelp. We really need to get you a bell, he told Snips, taking the wand the little familiar was offering. I take it this is the missing wand. Snips nodded, sat on his shoulder as the drama continued to unfold. Sirius noticed that Remus kept looking at Snips, then the mirror, then Snips, then the room like he was counting, then the mirror, then Sirius. Do not, Sirius said, a hand up. Do not even give voice to that theory. I like this guy, and you are not ruining this for me. I'll be honest, even if I do give voice to the theory, it's immediately followed up with why and how, Remus said, looking at Snips, who, for the most part, seemed singularly disinterested in their drama and more interested in the larger issue of Barty Jr. Okay, say he did for a second give the theory merit. This was nothing like a certain rat, because Snips definitely didn't seem inclined to fly under the radar. He was a particular magical creature of unknown origin that kept sticking its beak where it didn't belong, albeit in the name of keeping Harry safe, which he could get behind. Had he, Sirius, talked with Snips? Yes, but that was just the blanket benefits of animagus magic. Saying that was part of the evidence also had pretty much every single familiar in Hogwarts as potentially human, and he was pretty sure the numbers weren't there. Plus, Snape was a Death Eater. He would have been invested in helping other Death Eaters get Harry to Moldy-Valdy, not sabotaging them. And while he did have a disparaging opinion of Sirius, he was pretty sure they had worked past that, and Snape had never met a grudge he didn't like. No, at the end of the day, he was reasonably sure that Remus's theory was unsound, and that was even before factoring in his other questions of why and how. So, we agree this is not that, Sirius said, pointing at Snips before indicating the mirror. Well, you agree, Remus said. I'm going to have to do a little more digging first, satisfy for myself that we're not getting a repeat of he, who must not be named. Sirius debated on asking Remus if he'd turn into a worse Snips, decided that was in poor taste. Defense classes were cancelled for the next week due to, according to Dumbledore, accidentally hiring the wrong Alastor Moody. How? Ron demanded. It's not like there's a surplus of Mad-Eye Moody's running around. I mean, you went from having 5 brothers to 8, Harry pointed out. Yeah, I'm still not sure about that, Ron admitted. I mean, yes, I know that technically it's a prank, but usually their pranks would have petered out by now. I'm anticipating some big payoff at some point. The Yule Ball would be a good time. Or when they graduate. Going back to the Yule Ball, though, Hermione said. Are you two going to ask anyone out? Harry especially needs a date. He's one of the champions. Unless you're volunteering, no, Ron said. I mean, look at them, he said, gesturing around the hall. They travel in packs. What are we supposed to do, Lasso One? You ask, Ron. Snips shook his head, left off trying to direct Harry to the greens to pointedly indicate Hermione. Harry blinked. UMSO, just so you know, I feel stupid for not asking earlier. You should, Hermione said, packing up her books with the obvious intent of heading for the library. And no. No what? No, I'm not going to the ball with you. I already have a date. Ron's attention snapped back to her so fast Harry was surprised he didn't break something. What? When? Who? It's not Malfoy, is it? Harry asked, aware he was grimacing. You know, Hermione said, waving them off. Do we know him? Not personally. She stood. You get one more question. Harry and Ron exchanged glances. He's not in Slytherin, is he? Ron asked. As in attending? No, bye now, she said, heading off. Well, at least it's not Malfoy, Harry pointed out. We're still back to the original issue, Ron said. How do we ask a girl out? You can't just march up to one and ask her right out. She's surrounded by witnesses, so if she says no, and you ask someone else then she says, didn't you already ask so-and-so? Wasn't I good enough to ask first? And oi, this is exhausting who came up with this system. I wouldn't know, Harry said. But maybe Snips is onto something. What other girls do we know? The immediate answer was Ginny and Luna, who were just coming in. Ron waved them over. Okay, here's the plan, he said when they sat down. See, as third years you can't go, but if you went with us, Ginny, you go with Harry, and actually I'm going with Dean, she said. But thanks for asking, I guess. Neville's asked me already, Luna said. Which was very nice. Carlin and I are going anyway as members of the press, but I wasn't expecting to be asked, and twice now is very nice. My own sister gets a date before me. That's it, we're closed, Ron told Harry. Unless you know anyone else. Personally, Harry asked. The girls on the Quidditch team, but I think they've all already gotten dates too. In retrospect, we really should have been expanding our social circles. Aren't you two in the Slug Club? Ginny asked. Aren't there girls in there? Yes, but they've all paired off too. Fred and George are right. We left it off too late. Did mine ears deceive me, Georgie? Fred asked, plopping down across from them. Eichel Ronikin said we were right. I want to remember this day always, George said, hands clasped. Hello, Fred. Hello, George, Luna greeted. Hello, Fergus. SHH, Fergus said. I'm deep undercover. We don't need the lions realizing a snake has infiltrated their table. How is this infiltration? Ginny asked. Luna sits over here all the time. But she's Ravenclaw. There's no long-standing rivalry. It's like Poland in relation to England and France. Moving on, Fred said, fingers up. We've come up with a new service, which from the sounds of it needs to be rendered, George said. So sign here, Fred said, producing a parchment and quill. Left-hand side, please, we're sorting by gender. Also put down your year for ease of sorting. What is this? Ron asked, looking at the parchment. Our latest racket, Fergus said proudly. Weasley and Associates Dating Services, Fred said. We're taking down names of those who are in need of a date for the Yule Ball, George said, and we're pairing them off with those who are year 3 and younger to maximize ball attendance. So it's a win all around. It's basically a lottery, Fergus said. You win the chance to not go to the ball alone. Ron considered the parchment again. Well, so long as I don't get paired up with someone with a funny nose. Define funny. Off-center. But Weasley and Associates make no guarantees. Really? Ginny asked Ron as he jotted his information down. You'd be that petty? Look, noses are important, Ron said. When you're talking to someone, it's kind of right there on their face, so if it's wonky, you got no choice but to look at it, because if you look away, that's rude. You're weird, Ron. Or give you a few years and see how much attention you pay to noses. Charming, Fergus said, taking them in before looking at Fred and George, who shrugged. What about you, Harry? Care to try our dating services? Harry considered, looked over when he heard giggling to note a gaggle of girls that kept shooting him glances and tittering. Did not want to wade into that. Gimme, he said, reaching for the parchment. Harry Potter in the dating pool, Fred said. Now that'll net some interest. And profits, Fergus agreed. By the way, it's 3 nuts to sign in. What? Ron squawked. Also an extra sickle to ensure visual standards. When did we start charging extra for that? George asked once Ron had paid up, since your brother brought it up. Ron got detention for going over the table at that. Chapter 55, in which colors are corrected. Chapter text: The approaching Yule Ball also had Ron and Harry pulling out their dress robes. Ron fished out his copy of charms for charming customization upon registering that, yes, his dress robes were maroon, and that was the least egregious thing about it. Why? Ron moaned, flipping through the book. I'd look like my great-aunt Tessie if I wore those. Sniff at it. I'd smell like my great-aunt Tessie. Maybe there's like an air freshener spell, Harry said, flipping through his standard book of spells. I know there's Scourgify, but that's for dirt, not smells. Harry did manage to find one, and after Ron decided that chrysanthemum's smell was better than whatever musty scent it was before, they moved on to trying to at least change the color. So according to this chromatic spell, it's easier to nudge it over to a color close to it on the color wheel than to flip it entirely, Ron said, tapping on the color wheel on the page. So maroon's sort of a red color. Probably better to go towards purple, Harry said. If you turn it orange, you might have to wear it to the Chudley Cannons games. Plus, it'd clash with your hair, Seamus tossed over. It took a lot of poking and prodding and muttering before it got to a wine color, a little more before it got over to a purple. And by the time they had to go to dinner, they were having serious debates on whether or not to push it a little farther to a dark blue. Because if you look at the wheel here, orange and blue are complementary, so that go well with my hair, Ron said, flipping through the book. But would it work with your complexion? Dean asked. Is Ron studying? Hermione asked, stunned. The alternative was Ron going to the Yule Ball in maroon, Harry told her. The good news is now that we know this works, I have a lot of sweaters to go through, Ron said. We probably should have practiced on the sweaters. Probably. So you boys do have dates. Hermione asked as they sat down. You especially need one, Harry, since you're one of the champions. Thanks, Hermione, I didn't need that reminder, Harry said, grimacing, and it's taken care of. So who are you going out with? No clue, Ron said. Harry almost echoed him before something else occurred to him. You didn't tell us your date. I don't have to tell you mine. You don't know, do you? Hermione asked. We don't know, Harry admitted. We signed up for Fred and George's dating thing. I had to pay extra for a centered nose, Ron muttered. You signed up for that blind date thing? Hermione asked, sounding like she couldn't decide between baffled and appalled. You don't understand the pressure boys are under with this dating thing, Ron said. We're expected to keep track of who everyone is with already so we don't ask someone who's already taken if the first person says no, and we ask again somehow that person has already heard about the first person, and then we get to hear about how their second choice get out. It's a lot of pressure. Gesture at her. Why don't the girls do the asking? You all already network and know who's going with who. Why don't you just handle that final bit? Because we like watching you sweat. Hermione asked, eyebrow raised. I knew it. They headed back for the dorm with the intent to tackle the lace next, were intercepted by Professor McGonagall, who asked for Harry to follow her to the headmaster's office. Harry and Ron looked at each other, shrugged, trailed after her, Hermione following. Ah, Harry, good, Dumbledore said when they came into his crowded office. And Mr. Weasley and Miss Granger, technically your presence isn't required for this, but I had taken out too many teacups so this works out well. Ah, yeah, Percy, why are you here? Ron asked. Percy, meanwhile, was practically bouncing on his heels. We've figured it out. Which was when Harry registered the goblet of fire on Dumbledore's desk. Wait, you figured it out. I can get out of the tournament, Harry blurted. Yep, this is Weatherby. He's the one Mr. Crouch kept getting me confused with. Turns out he was Imperiused, Percy muttered. Professor Slughorn wrote me, Weatherby said. And Mr. Weasley and I have been combing through wizarding law ever since. And we finally found it, Percy said, indicating everyone in the room. We have your formal resignation from the tournament drawn up. It needs to be signed by you, your guardians in the event you're not of majority, the other participants, and your respective headmasters. Professor Dumbledore, we looked, and you do need to sign under Harry and Cassius, name so twice. We put it back in the goblet, and if it accepts the resignation, yes, Ron. What happens to Harry aside from getting out of this? Ron asked. This sounds like there's something extra involved. You're not allowed to participate in the Triwizard Tournament for the next 150 years, Percy told Harry. That sounds like something I can live with, Harry said, grinning and suddenly feeling very light. Where do I sign? Everyone took their turn at the paper, and when the last signature was on the paper, Percy rolled it up and put it in the goblet. Everyone watching it warily, Hermione and Fleur squeaked when the goblet suddenly burst into flame, a piece of singed paper fluttering around before Dumbledore caught it, read it, handed it to Percy. Percy accepted it, read it. Harry Potter, you are officially out of the Triwizard Tournament, Percy told him. A pity, Fleur told Crumb, as the Hogwarts students celebrated. I was starting to enjoy him playing. At least you don't have to figure out what to do about the lake, Cassius told Harry. Do what? Harry asked blankly. As it turned out, Harry had evaded taking a February dip in the Black Lake. The more immediate joy of being out of the Triwizard Tournament was that Harry was no longer expected to be one of the first ones out on the dance floor. This didn't mean they weren't receiving dance lessons. Professor McGonagall was very insistent they learn how to conduct themselves during the ball, which also included learning how to use a varied place setting. You start outside and work your way in, Professor McGonagall told them, pacing along the length of the table. Do not drink out of the finger bowl. Yes, Mr. Potter. Which one is that? Harry asked. The small bowl of water with the lemon wedges in front of you. Any other questions? She asked, scanning the table. Ask now. I will not be coming to your rescue during the ball. Which was the general opinion of the professors, seeing as how all of them were insisting that they learn some etiquette and how to conduct themselves. But soon Christmas Eve was upon them. Ron's dress robes were no longer horrible blue with the lace turned into something resembling snowflakes, and they were ready for the Yule Ball. Before that, however, Harry, Hermione, and the Weasleys were all filing for the headmaster's office. You will be heading for the Burrow, Dumbledore said, holding out a case of flu powder for them. As I understand it, the ministry doesn't feel comfortable with adding a house to the flu network when the house is still unfinished. When it's time for you to come back, the fireplace to ask for is Hogwarts headmaster's office. I'm not sure if there's other schools linked to the flu network, but it's probably best to err on the side of caution. Harry nodded, made sure to practice a few times before taking his turn at the fire, landed on a poofy dog bed when he stumbled out of the fire, a black dog bounding around him before licking his face. "Sirius, stop, give him air," Remus said, hauling Harry up. "We had moved the bed this morning. Ron shoved it back." "Thanks, Ron," Harry said, exchanging thumbs up with his friend. Sirius barked one last time before shifting back to person. Harry had to take a minute at his Christmas sweater, resplendent with blinking lights and drifting snowflakes. "How have you been, Harry?" Sirius asked, ruffling his hair. "Are you excited for the ball? Who'd you ask out?" "Good, maybe, I don't know," Harry said, answering in order. "Fred and George arranged it. We had to get everyone sorted out last night. We'll be putting family organizations into the stockings," Fred said. "Yes, your date has a centered nose," George told Ron when he opened his mouth. "Good," Ron declared. "Boys," Hermione sighed. Chapter 56, in which parties are patronized. Chapter text: They were having a Christmas Eve party, as Harry found out, mostly to avoid scheduling conflicts with the Yule Ball on Christmas. Harry, personally, agreed with Ron's assessment of yes, 2 parties, and was happy to wear his new Christmas sweater for the occasion. Harry was also happy to discover that a lot of his school friends had been invited and got to meet their family as well. Also Ron's one squib relative, who had apparently spent a couple of hours with his kids trying to explain to Mr. Weasley the how and why of the TV, which did end up with them getting the TV working. It was kind of funny, seeing all these grown witches and wizards clustered around the TV and being absolutely blown away by Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. "Are you sure Muggles made this?" Mr. Weasley kept asking, pointing at the TV. "Are you absolutely sure that this isn't magic?" Which then led into an explanation on how stop-motion animation worked, spearheaded by a boy a few years younger than Harry who sounded absolutely obsessed with an Oddman Studios. The food was delicious, which was to be expected when it was both Mrs. Weasley and Creature cooking. Apparently the two had been busy for most of the day alternating jobs, both of them looking abashed whenever someone complimented them. In all, the party was loud, crowded, and boisterous, but surrounded by the sounds of friends and family, of happiness and contentment with all the terrifying stuff miles away. It felt good. It felt really good, and for once Harry could call the feeling in his chest genuinely happy. Remus seemed to notice this too. "Harry," he said, coming over and putting a hand on his shoulder, "can I ask a favor?" "Ah," Harry noised. Sure, what is it?" "I'd like you to try the Patronus charm again." Harry blinked at that. But I'm not allowed to use magic outside of Hogwarts, you know that." "I do, but the trace doesn't really make much of a distinction. Seeing as you're in an adult wizard's house, surrounded by adult wizards, any magic conducted near you will be attributed to the adult wizards, since they're supposed to be responsible and monitoring you. Look up at Sirius coming over with fresh drinks. Understand I'm not including Sirius in this assessment." "Oh no, what are you telling him?" Sirius asked, handing a drink to Remus. "He wants me to try the Patronus charm again," Harry supplied. "Really? You think you could do it?" Sirius asked Harry. "Because you know intent is half the battle. If you think you can do it, that's you halfway. He did once by convincing himself of that. I told him it wasn't a good strategy long-term," Remus told Sirius. "But I have a good feeling about it now. I like these good feelings. Hey, everyone clear some space here. Harry's going to do the Patronus charm." That got most of the party interested and made Harry very nervous about being the center of attention. Remus patted his shoulder. "Ignore him, he gets like that when he's tipsy," Remus assured him. "Now just should probably ask you if you have your wand first." "It's upstairs," Harry stopped abruptly when Snips flew in for a landing with his tail wrapped around his wand. "Okay, that works, thanks." There went his plan of going upstairs and pretending to look for his wand until everyone gave up. "Right, now close your eyes. Imagine everyone in their underwear," Sirius counseled. "Don't do that." "Do it," Fred and George chimed. It had the intended effect, though, got Harry to snicker and not think about everyone watching him, fix the image in his mind. Expecto Patronum. Something big and silvery exploded out of his wand, cantered the length of the room to everyone's glee, glowing brighter from their comments and applause as it trotted back to Harry, Remus shaking his shoulders and cheering on how he had done it. Sirius was making odd wheezing noises, a disbelieving laugh underlying his speech when he reached out to touch the glowing silver stag. "I don't believe it, Moony. Moony, it's James." Harry blinked. "Wait, what?" "Remember the bit about us being the marauders and certain people being unregistered animagi?" Remus asked, also taken with the shape. James turned into a stag. "Good to see you again, Prongs," Sirius said, gently stroking the patroness's nose. "Happy Christmas." Christmas morning had breakfast and presents. Harry got his promised Weasley sweater, this one with a dragon on it, which he resolved to wear next care of magical creatures. Ron got his predicted maroon sweater, and judging by the way he and Harry were meeting eyes and nodding solemnly, Harry expected it wouldn't remain maroon for much longer. And as promised, the dating arrangements were in the stockings. "Emily Dobbs?" Ron asked, reading from his slip. "Her nose is in the center of her face, we checked," Fred told him. "Well, that's what's important. What do you mean she's in Slytherin?" "Ah, you didn't specify house." "Dang it," Ron muttered. "Who'd you get, Harry?" Harry checked his. "Laura Madley, Hufflepuff, first year. Do not propose trading," Hermione told Ron sternly. "I can't guarantee that Laura's nose is centered," George agreed. Ron sighed, reread his paper. "Well, second year. Hopefully 2 years of being around Malfoy hasn't ruined her. She'd be getting in about the time he started his hippogriff obsession, so there's hope," Harry agreed. "Both of you, honestly," Hermione sighed. "Hey, you still haven't told us who you're going with," Ron shot back. "And you'll find out alongside everyone else." Morning to lunch was spent enjoying presents and having breakfast and lunch sort of blur together. Between lunch and tea, saw them outside playing in the snow, Sirius running around in dog form and chasing snowballs they threw for him. Hermione was the first one to head back to Hogwarts after warming up with tea and hot chocolate, citing the need to get ready. "We still got like 3 hours, Ron said. "How long does getting ready even take?" "You should probably get started," Mrs. Weasley said, eyeing them. Harry was happy to learn that they weren't going back to Hogwarts alone. Apparently there was a need for chaperones at the Yule Ball, and Remus and Sirius had volunteered. "Now remember what we discussed. If the punch isn't spiked by 9, spike the punch," Sirius said. "No," Remus said. "We're chaperoning. We're supposed to be responsible adults, Padfoot. How dare you speak such slander?" "Fine, you're in front of other responsible adults. At least pretend to be responsible for 5 minutes." "Ah, right," Sirius said, grinning sheepishly at Mrs. Weasley. "I think we had better go with Arthur," Mrs. Weasley said to Mr. Weasley. "Now look what you've done," Remus said to Sirius. It was decided that the kids would get ready in their dorms to avoid getting too much soot on their dress robes, which saw them arriving to a common room currently in a tizzy as everyone was getting ready. Harry and Ron managed to make it to their room just as Seamus and Dean came out. "Talk to Neville. We can't get him to calm down," Dean told them. Neville was busy pacing in front of a shelf of plants, and Trevor, holding a flower and wearing handsome earthy green dress robes with yellow vines on the hems. He was worked up over the whole thing and only left when Harry pointed out that he might be keeping Luna waiting. "We probably ought to get ready and go after him," Ron observed as Neville tripped out. "Make sure he actually makes it down the steps. And we need to find our dates," Harry told him, tugging his robes off the hanger he had put them on. I don't know what Laura Madley looks like. We can't even count on robe color," Ron sighed, going to his robes. They were down in record time, Snips sitting on Harry's shoulder and primping a little white bow tie he had procured. Lingered in the common room for a few minutes before admitting that Hermione might not be ready yet. And honestly, Harry was getting tired of having his feet get stepped on and the rest of him get shoved against the wall he and Ron were loitering by. The entrance hall wasn't any less crowded, and Ron and Harry ended up stopping on the first empty step above the crowd so they could better scan the hall. "Well, I know who they're not," Harry said, looking at a crowd of students he recognized from shared charms as Ravenclaws. "Oi, this is taking too long, hey?" Ron hollered across the hall. "Emily and Laura." Ernie Macmillan waved at them and pointed. Snips launched off Harry's shoulder, and between the two of them they were able to find the two girls. "Hi," Harry said as Snips settled back down on his shoulder. "I'm Harry, this is Ron. I think we're your dates." "Laura, Emily," the girl with muted pink robes said, pointing at herself, and then the girl next to her in pine green robes. Both had something like white glitter around their shoulders which gave them a sort of frosted look. "Are you really famous? Everyone got really excited when I got your name and you don't look famous." "I'm not, he is," Harry said, indicating Ron. "I'm very famous," Ron said, nodding. "Lucky," Laura said to Emily. "Does your brother really work with dragons?" Emily asked. "Because I heard them mentioning a guy named Weasley when they were talking about the dragons in the first task, and your last name is Weasley. That be Charlie Weasley. He's one of my older brothers," Ron said. "So I'm not exactly sure what we're supposed to be doing," Harry admitted to Laura as Emily started peppering Ron with questions about dragons. "This is a first for me." "Me too," Laura said. "But Ernie said the doors aren't open yet, so we're supposed to wait out here." "Makes sense." "Want to help me find my friend Neville? He seemed a little nervous when he headed down here." Laura nodded, and they ended up holding hands to avoid getting separated in the press of people. Snips flew up again, circling the hall before tightening up. "He's very useful," Laura said when they got close and Snips settled on Neville's head. "What is he?" "Oh, hello, Snips. So nice of you to join us," Luna said. "And Harry, hello. I'm glad to see you found dates. You were looking very worried." It was starting to get a little dicey, Harry admitted. "Luna, this is Laura. Laura, this is Luna Lovegood and Neville Longbottom. Neville, Neville, breathe. You have a snake on you," Laura observed. "Yes, this is Marv," Luna said. "She's seeing me in and then she and Trevor will be off enjoying themselves." "Wait, what?" Neville asked. "Hi, Harry. Hi, Luna." "Hi, Carlin and Dennis," Harry said, taking note of the Creevy brothers running over. "Where are your dates?" "We're with the press," Dennis said very seriously, Carlin nodding and holding up his camera. "They're handling pictures. Fitzherbert is handling the documentation," Luna said, the quill in question hovering nearby and occasionally jotting things down. "Ah," Harry noised, looked when Laura tugged on his sleeve. "Is this normal?" she asked. "I know magic school means a bunch of different stuff, and you did fight a dragon." "You get used to it," Harry assured her. Ron and Emily eventually found their way over, her and Laura pointing out people they knew. Harry still didn't see Hermione, and he was starting to get a little concerned. "Maybe she made up having a date," Ron surmised. "Why would she lie about that?" Harry asked him. "Probably to teach us a lesson about asking her earlier." "I know who she's dating, but the familiar charter doesn't allow me to say," Marv said. At Harry's blank look, Crookshanks told me. "Well?" Ron asked, noting where Harry's attention was. "Crookshanks told Marv but swore her to secrecy," Harry summarized. "So you can really talk to snakes?" Emily asked. "Ross said you could. Does it only work on snakes or does it work on other reptiles? Because you know there's such a thing as legless lizards." "We haven't actually tested that, to be honest," Harry admitted, pondering this. "I know Animagi can understand animals. That's sort of a side effect of it." "And then could we learn it, since it's technically a foreign language?" "These are good questions," Ron said, "and making me wonder what's taking so long with the letting us in bit. I'd rather be having these discussions sitting down." As if in response to that, the hall doors opened. "Terribly sorry for the delay. We had to do some last-minute adjustments as our previous estimations of required hall capacity proved too small," Dumbledore announced. "With that said, champions, will you and your dates step forward and lead our fine schools into the hall?" Emily was small enough that Ron was able to give her a boost when she tried and failed to see the champions. Harry spotted Carlin and Dennis in two precarious perches working to get the best shots. Dennis actually hopping down to get close-ups of the champions, and then the rest of the crowd as they filed in and along the sides to watch the three pairs start the dance. Ron suddenly swore. "Wait a minute with Crumb, Hermione." "Yup," Marv said, nodding. "I'm pretty sure Crookshanks would have burst if he couldn't tell someone. No wonder she didn't want to tell us." Hermione going to the ball with Crumb, however, suddenly became second potatoes as Fred and George came in, as did Donald, Edmund, and Hubert. "I think we finally got that payoff you were predicting," Harry told Ron. "Just how?" Ron asked, staring. "How Polyjuice Potion." Which then bears asking the question of who the other three are. Don't you have 5 brothers? "Ah,